All right, everyone, here we are. So welcome to the call. We're going to spend a couple of hours together and learn how to pass our IG2 or NG2 practical project. So my name is Will Taylor. Welcome to everybody here. Now, if you want to ask any questions, you've got two ways you can ask questions. So first of all, there's a chat function. You might have seen some chats fly around already. I'll just type in hello. So if you want to chat with me, just drop a question in there. You're more than welcome to. There's also the Q&A function. So if you look at the bottom of the screen, there's a Q&A. You can type in your questions there. You can type them in anonymously as well. I will keep an eye on those and I will try to answer the questions at the appropriate time. So I'm going to try not to jump around, to the end, just as I'm starting the beginning. So I'll try and tackle the questions as I go through at the appropriate time. Anyway, so let's get into things. So I'll just start my presentation here, which I accidentally turned off. So let's turn that on again. There we are. And let's share the screen and get into this. So firstly, who am I? Why am I qualified to talk to you? Well, my name is Will Taylor. I am a chartered member of IOSH and I'm the owner, founder of Compassa. And we are the only NEBOSH course provider in the world to fully deliver our courses through interactive video technology. We try to make them fun, engaging, and interactive. I also used to be a team leader for a NEBOSH exam team. So I've done a lot of examination and I've checked other people's marking as well. And in terms of qualifications, I've got a couple of NEBOSH diplomas, both the health and safety and the environmental diploma. I've won 2 Best Candidate Awards for the NEBOSH Safety Diploma. I've got a Bachelor of Science with honours in Safety and Environmental Management. I've done 13 different NEBOSH assessments across all of my certificates and diplomas. And I've been a safety professional since 2001. In terms of our pass rate, so Compassa is probably the most transparent of all of the course providers in terms of our pass rates. Since we launched and over the last 12 months, our pass rate has been pretty stable at 75% for the NEBOSH practical project. This is for NG2. I don't have the data yet for IG2 because we only launched our IG2, our IGC course back in April, so it's still early days. I haven't had enough people go through the qualification yet to give us a meaningful statistic. Why don't you, here's a quick suggestion, in the chat, why don't you just let me know if you're a Compassa student already? That would be kind of cool. And if you're not a Compassa student, then you are also very, very welcome to this call. So drop me a message in the chat to let me know which course provider you're with. And if you're not a student, if you are a NEBOSH trainer or a NEBOSH tutor, you are certainly most welcome. Very happy to see you here learning how to get your students through the NG2 practical project. So please take all this information away so that you can help your own students. We have a load of free resources, by the way, in addition to the webinar. So we're going to have a look at the NEBOSH website in a moment. There's some gold on there, absolute gold for you to use for your NEBOSH project. After this as well, probably tomorrow night, you're going to get an email from me with a link to download our guide on how to pass your NG2, IG2 on the first attempt. We usually sell that for about £13–14, so you'll get that for free, only if you've registered. If you're watching this on YouTube, obviously you're not going to get this for free. You must have registered it in advance. There's the Compassa YouTube channel. We've got a ton of stuff on there as well. If you just type in NEBOSH into YouTube, you'll find us, no problem. Got a lot of paid resources as well. Just check out the website. There's loads of stuff. We've got books. We've got a rescue package if you want to become one of my students and so on. Here's our YouTube channel. So on the YouTube channel, where I suggest you go is into the playlists. So we have 2 playlists which are very useful for you. One is what I call the daft mistakes. So check out that. It has 15 daft mistakes that you can very easily avoid, things that will cause you to fail very quickly. And there's another playlist about hazards where we explain to you how to write each one of your hazards so that it meets the marking criteria. So check that out. That's completely free. If you're willing to pay a little bit of money to get some extra help, then go to our website, compassa.co.uk. You can go on exam resources and you'll find loads of stuff there available as well. So let's have a quick look at the chat. What have we got? We've got some Compassa students, got someone from Wise Global Training, very welcome. Phoenix, welcome to you. Shields, I used to work for Shields a long time ago, so I know Shields very well. We still talk occasionally, so we haven't stopped speaking. So welcome to every single one of you. Now, what I'm going to do is show you how to pass. What I want to do is to show you what critical mistakes to avoid. And believe me, there are lots of critical mistakes that you really want to avoid. What we're going to cover in this session is just first of all the basics, real basic stuff about what NG2 is. And then we'll talk about the pass mark. And then we're going to look at marking criteria. I suspect that most of you, especially if you're not a Compassa student, I suspect that you have no idea what the marking criteria are. And it is super important because if you fail to meet the marking criteria, you are going to fail the project. So we'll have a look at that. We'll then talk about the choice of workplace and how do you choose? And the situation, which is very common, what if I don't have a workplace? Then we'll get into your choice of hazards and categories. That's like one of the hardest things at the beginning. What hazards am I going to risk assess in this workplace? And then we will look at the key instructions and key mistakes you've got to avoid for part 1, part 2, part 3, and part 4. And then we'll talk about how do you submit. And finally, we'll talk about what do you do if you fail. So that's what we're going to go through. Remember to put your questions in the chat or in the Q&A, and I'll try and address those as we go through it. So what is the NG2 project? Basically, it is a risk assessment based on a real workplace. So you will be filling in some kind of risk assessment form, something like that, 5 steps to risk assessment. In addition to the risk assessment, there is kind of a report that you have to fill in as well, where you have to justify 3 actions. When I say justify, you have to basically persuade. That's what, justify. You're persuading a manager on why we should do these 3 actions. And you will use a mixture of different arguments, moral, legal, financial. There's some risk-based arguments and so on. So it's a risk assessment and a bit of a report. Now, first thing is, what about the word count? Now, there is a word count, but the word count, to be absolutely clear, there is no limit on your word count. You can write as much as you like. However, don't go crazy. It says in the guidance, it says that we have included word counts for each section. These are approximate word counts. These word counts should be used as a guide only and should not be seen as an absolute minimum or maximum. So you can write as much as you like, but don't go crazy. Chances are, if you have 50 pages, chances are, well, first of all, the examiner is going to be quite cross with you because now they have to read 50 pages of information. But if you've got written 50 pages, I suspect you are not focusing on the marking criteria because you can satisfy the marking criteria, I think, with about 12 or 13 pages. You don't have to write that much. So about 10 pages for the risk assessment plus the report, you should be good. So don't worry about the word count, but don't go too far. Now, in terms of choosing the workplace, so here we've got a picture of a workplace. First of all, that's an important point. You are choosing a workplace. You are risk assessing a workplace. You are not risk assessing an activity. Now, you can, if you want, risk assess an activity. I don't think you're going to fail because you've risk assessed an activity. But you'll probably find that in a whole workplace, you have a lot more hazards to choose from. It's kind of easier to find enough hazards when you're risk assessing a workplace. So try and just choose an area. Now, this can be the entire workplace, or it can be just a small part of the workplace. It's up to you. But something to remember, to reassure you, is that nearly all workplaces are suitable. Nearly all of them. So if you're worried about your choice of workplace and say, oh, can I do this or can I do that? The answer most of the time is yes, you can. Nearly all workplaces are suitable. There are some exceptions. I would say one big exception is perhaps working from home. You probably don't want to use your office in the bedroom as a workplace. There aren't that many hazards in there. There's not a lot you can do. So any kind of real workplace where you're at work, That would normally be fine. Let me share some key points on this, because whilst nearly all workplaces are suitable, you must have permission to risk assess it. So you can't just walk into a random shop and start to risk assess the shop. Because when you do a risk assessment, you are supposed to ask questions, check records, and do a proper check, a thorough check. And if you're just a customer in a shop walking around without any permission, then you won't be able to ask those questions, you won't get those records. So make sure you've got permission. The other thing which is very important is that you have been able to access the workplace recently. So you cannot risk assess your old workplace where you no longer work. It must be something you have access to now. So that, by the way, is the only time I've ever seen someone fail for the choice of workplace. I had this student who decided to risk assess a fitness studio that she used to work at last year. And she wrote down in part 1 in the methodology, she wrote down, I used to work here and I have old photos and some videos of what we used to do, and I've done my risk assessment on those. And the examiner just went, that was it, kind of cancelled, didn't even mark the rest of it, said your risk assessment is not up to date, it's not suitable and sufficient, doesn't meet the criteria. So please make sure it's a real workplace that you have access to today. One of the key things is that your workplace has to have a minimum of 10 hazards, and it has to be 10 different hazards. They can't all be similar. They can't be the same. Now, your workplace can be anonymous, and this is very useful if you're struggling to get permission to do the risk assessment there. You can keep everything confidential. So you could just call it, you can give it a false name, a false location. You could call it Restaurant X or Supermarket ABC or Office Z. You call it whatever you like, but it has to be a real workplace. So what if you don't have a workplace? Well, you're going to have to go around and ask some people, can I use your workplace? So who could you ask? Well, you could ask your friends, you could ask your family members, hey, you've got a workplace, can I get permission to go to your workplace? And they might say, oh, I don't think they'll let you. And you can say, yeah, but I can keep it confidential. I can give it a false name and a false location. I promise I won't get you into any trouble. So ask your friends and family. You can ask ex-colleagues, someone you used to work with. Can I do it there? A very common way of doing it is to go to your local business. I've known a lot of people. In fact, I myself have done this in the past. When I was doing my Unit B of my NEBOSH diploma, I did one of my projects on pets at home. And I did a risk assessment on mucking out the guinea pigs and the rabbits, because that created exposure to dust and allergens and poo and stuff like that. So it was the dust I was interested in because it's an asthmagen. So I just went to Pets at Home. They knew me because I had pets, and so I was always in there kind of buying snacks for the rabbits and things like that. And I just said, hey, I've got this project I need to do for university. I need somewhere where there are health hazards. You've got animals, you've got dusts and things like that. Would you mind if I just watched one of the staff muck out the guinea pigs and the rabbits, and I'll just take some notes, ask some questions. I promise I'll stay out of the way. And they were like, yeah, fine, I don't care. Sure, no problem. Off you go. So if you've got a local mechanic that you're friendly with, just ask your local mechanic. Do you mind if I just watch the mechanics do stuff and ask you some questions? I've known someone do it at their local corner shop. Just a local corner shop, where they sell vapes and things. And the guy's like, yeah, as long as you buy some vapes and some alcohol, I don't care what you do. Yeah, you want to go in the back room? No problem. Local businesses are very, very easy with this, and all of those businesses are absolutely fine. You will find 10 hazards, no problem, but you must have permission to do it. Let me have a quick look at the chat, because I just saw there's a question in there. So someone's asking, I work in a hospital in an office and we do home visits. Can I use the kitchen, office and home visits in one assessment? Or could I ask the ward where I don't work in? Okay, so I would separate the home visits. to be honest, because you're in someone's home. What I would suggest you do in that situation, you got a hospital, right? So great approach. You could do it just on the offices. You could probably do it. You could just do the offices. I'll show you an example in a moment. I've got an office situation, loads of hazards in offices. If you can't find enough hazards in the office, do the office plus the kitchen, because then you should have enough hazards, because you've got electrics in the kitchen, you've got like dishwashers and kettles and toasters, things like that. Yeah. Or you could do the office and the kitchen and the toilets, or the office, the kitchen, the toilets, and the car park. Yeah. Or you could just go to the ward. Or you could just go to the facilities team, where they probably have a little facilities workshop. Maybe there's a plant room, some compressors, some generators. Yeah, there's a lot you can do in a hospital. Don't pick the whole hospital. It's a bit overwhelming. Just pick a small part, and then just try and find enough hazards in that small part. And if you can't find enough, add an extra part. Let me just show you how they do that on the sample. So I'll just share the screen. Let me find the NEBOSH sample. I've got it here somewhere. There it is. So here's the NEBOSH sample. And it is based on a garage. And they've got the risk assessment will cover the garage and the spray booth activities. So two things, garage and spray booth. They are doing the office in a separate risk assessment. So it's not the office. So can you see how you can take two parts of the workplace, stick them together, and that will get you one workplace. Okay, nothing else in the chat. Brilliant. Well, let's carry on. So how is it scored? Well, there is no score. It's a pass or a fail. Simple as that. Here we have some feedback from NEBOSH after someone has failed, and you can see all the criteria: met, 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 and then not met, 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 not met. Okay, this is real feedback. So you have to meet all of the criteria in here. That's the criteria you have to meet. So if any of these are referred, not met, the whole thing fails. So this is what we call the critical criteria. It's pass or fail. And I've got to be honest with you. It's not that NEBOSH are ruthless. It's not that the examiners are ruthless. The examiners want you to pass. NEBOSH want you to pass. But the way this assessment is designed is that it can feel ruthless. One little error, you're going to see as I go through this, sometimes the errors are tiny, tiny little things. One little error can sometimes cause you to not meet that criteria and the whole thing fails. Now, you can make mistakes. There are lots of mistakes you can make, but some mistakes will cause you to not meet certain criteria. And if that's the case, the whole thing fails. So stay with me, and I'll walk you through those mistakes which you cannot make. So it has some very strict marking criteria. And it's going to feel a bit like a boxing match. You know, that you got this pass or fail type system, and you're going to get hit by the marking criteria, and that's you. Like bang, 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 bang. You don't want to fail twice, believe me. Just fail once. Here's a tip for you. People who pass are people who focused on the marking criteria. I'll say that again. I get a lot of people asking me questions about things that have nothing to do with the marking criteria. So I will get people asking me about spelling. There's no marking criteria on spelling. You can misspell things, it's fine. I'll get people asking me about formatting and bullet points. And can I write this in there? Can I write that in there? And I'm like, it's not required by the marking criteria, so write it in there if you want to. It's not going to make you fail. It's just not required. I don't see why. Why do you want to write something down which isn't necessary to pass? Stop trying to be clever. Stop trying to do something fancy. Focus on the marking criteria and do what you have to do to pass. That's all. Everything else is a complete and utter distraction from your time. And this is how people end up writing 50 pages of NG2 projects. You don't need to do that. Someone says, so it's either 100% or 0%. That's it. Very hard. Yes, yes. This is why the pass rate for NG2 and IG2 is lower than the pass rate for the exam. People get stressed for the exam. Don't stress for the exam. The exam's easy compared to this project. So focus on the marking criteria. Now, how do we know the marking criteria? Well, there are 4 ways. 2 of these ways you have access to. So there are 2 things. We have learner guidance. And so let me find that for you. If we go to our NEBOSH website, so we're on nebosh.org there, go to the qualifications, go and find your qualification in here. You're doing a certificate, so it's in there. NGC's here, IGC's there. So we'll go on to NGC for the example. See the resources? Go down here. NG2 practical guidance. Let me zoom in a bit. NG2 practical guidance. Click on that. There it is. There's your practical guidance. And here's an example. So the example that I've opened, the example I've got here, you can download it from there. Click on the practical guidance. It's going to open this document here. So this is the guidance that you've got access to. And it just gives you all of the instructions. And it gives you some examples. All these instructions here, this is your guidance. So you should definitely read that. More than that though, we've got absolute gold here. We've got the examiner guidance. The examiner guidance is public on the NEBOSH website. Hallelujah. How do you find it? Well, it's actually very, very hard to find. Very hard to find. So, examiner guidance there takes you to this. We'll open it up. Right, examiner guidance. A little bit of a video. Let me zoom out a little bit. Here, there's a little e-learning. This is like an e-learning thing you can do. So you can actually learn to be an examiner doing this. This is what the examiners do as part of their introduction. Ignore the e-learning. Just click on this box up here, resources. Marker guidance. Open it up. This is the actual marker guidance that they have. Marking criteria. There's the marking criteria. It's all there. And if you go down a little bit, some really important stuff it says in here. It says, when marking a resubmitted, so if you failed and you've resubmitted it, it tells the examiner, you must only mark those parts of the risk assessment that were deemed not met. That's interesting. So if you resubmit, they will only mark, let me bring it up on the screen. Where was it? They will only mark the bits which were not met. So you don't have to change everything. You just change the bit you needed, you didn't pass on. That's all. So that's kind of useful. If we scroll down a bit more, it will tell you the marking criteria to use. So everything in here, right? All of this stuff here, right, where it says must have. This is a nice to have. That's a must have. All of that is mandatory. So that's how we know the marking criteria. Let me just skip forward again. So that's where you find it. Go to the NEBOSH website. It's there. Now, I have an advantage over you. I have thousands of students, and I have lots of people who are not my student who always ask me for help. So I've seen a lot of feedback from examiners, and I can see what examiners are failing people for and what they're allowing through. So that feedback has educated me on what causes people to fail. The 4th thing I've got access to is that I am able to email and call NEBOSH and ask for my own guidance, to ask questions on how to, on what's required, on how I interpret things. So basically, I know what the marking criteria are thanks to all of that. If you know the marking criteria, you can't fail. Well, you can fail because maybe you ignored it. So let's go through what the marking criteria are. First of all, some marking criteria is nice to have. So part 1 and part 4 has nice to have marking criteria. So basically you don't have to worry too much about part 1 and part 4. You can make a mess of part 1 and part 4 and it's okay. You should not fail for that. So don't worry too much about your description of the organization. Don't worry too much about your review date at the end. Worry about part 2 and part 3, because these are the parts where you cannot make any critical mistakes. You've got to get everything right. Part 2 and part 3. And that's where I'm going to spend most of my time in this webinar. Red alert here. This is the best approach to passing first time. So do this and it will really help you. The approach I want you to follow is this. I want you to study, and then I want you to write, and then I want you to check. What does that mean? I want you to study how to write a particular box. So learn how to fill in the hazard column. How do I fill in the hazard column? Once you've studied how to fill that in, go and write the whole column in one go. Once you've written it, go and check that you've done it correctly. So have a look at what your tutorial said on how to write a hazard, and then check that you did actually do it that way. Study how to fill in a box, write that box, check that you filled it in properly, and then, and only then, move on to the next box. The reason I tell you to do this is because there's just so much detail and so many mistakes that you can make, that if you study how to fill in the entire thing, like you're doing on this webinar, by the way, I'm going to teach you how to do the whole thing, but by the end of the webinar, you'll have forgotten a lot of the things I said at the beginning. That's the problem. There's just too much to remember. So when it comes to actually writing it, focus on one box, study how to write that one box, fill it in, check you've done it well, and then move on to the next box. And that is the only way to get through this without making a mistake. So study, write, check. Now, right now, you're probably feeling a little bit daunted, a little bit overwhelmed. You might feel that the NG2 project is like a big dinosaur trying to get you. Yeah, it can feel that way sometimes. It's a bit scary and overwhelming, the amount of detail that is involved. But don't worry, I'm going to walk you through it. So let's start with part one. Part one, as I said, is a nice to have. It's a non-critical section, so do not stress too much. Just fill in the boxes. That's all. It tells you here what you've got to write in. So just fill in the boxes and move on. But do tell the examiner what area you are risk assessing. That is helpful to the examiner. So fill it in, but don't stress and move on. It's a nice to have section. The next box is your methodology. We're still in part one, so it's still a nice to have section, so don't stress too much. But make sure you have visited the workplace. Write down that you have visited the workplace. So here you can see in the example, it says there, I went around the workshop, right? You have to be able to say that you visited it and you've been there, okay? So make sure you visited it recently, make sure it's not done from memory, that it's not a desktop exercise, it's not fictional. So you can't risk assess Jurassic Park, you cannot risk assess the Death Star or the Starship Enterprise or anything else which is fictional. It has to be a real workplace. Don't stress, it's still a nice to have section. Part two, right. Now you can stress. Now you can stress because this is a critical section. If you make big mistakes here, you are going to have a problem. So the best approach with this is the study, write, check approach. We are going to do it column by column. So what I don't want you to do, if I can bring up, where is it? Let me get my sample here. I do not want you to fill it in hazard by hazard. I do not want you to fill in all of that in one go. No, 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 no. I want you to fill it in column by column. I want you to fill in all of the hazards first. Hazard category. So fill that in, and then fill that in, and fill that in. Just go down. Don't go across. Go down. Where's my presentation? There it is. So fill in the hazard column. Once you've filled in the hazard column, then you fill in the who might be harmed and how column. So then once you've done all those hazards, you are then going to fill in this column here. This one, who might be harmed and how. Go down. Once you've done that, fill in the control measures, column 3 and column 4, because they work together, and work your way through all these here. So fill in all of this stuff and work your way down again, all of this, all that there, all that stuff. Then do the timescales. So at that point, fill all these in here, this timescale column, go work your way down, all the way down. And then finally do the job titles. You've guessed it. So work your way all the way down. That's the best approach. And I'll tell you why that's the best approach. Because in each column, there are key things you have to do. And if you work your way that way, I can guarantee you at some point, after you've filled in this bit here, you'll have forgotten what should go in there. Because in this thing here, there are 3 key pieces of information that have to go in the who might be harmed and how. And if you're working your way that way, I can guarantee you at some point you will forget what those 3 key pieces of information are, you might accidentally just put in 2. And if you only put 2 pieces of information in that box, that box is a big fat cross. So the reason why you go down is so that it's harder to forget what you need to do, because you'll just do, right, 3 pieces of information in there, brilliant, next one, 3 pieces of information in there, brilliant, next one, 3 in the next one, 3 in the next one. Just work your way down, ticking the boxes as you go through it. Much harder to miss something if you do that. Now, quick summary of the marking criteria. So across the whole risk assessment, what do they want you to do? And remember, this is a critical section. What the examiner wants to see is this. They want to see a minimum of 10 hazards where all of the columns have been filled in correctly. So when I say 10 hazards, with all of the columns filled in correctly, so that's a hazard. They want to see 10 hazards where all of that has been filled in correctly without any mistakes, which means that your hazard category is correct, your hazard description is correct, the who might be harmed and how is good. You've got your control, the controls are good enough to lower the risk. All of your actions here have a time scale. All of your actions have a job title. You have to do that for 10 hazards, 10 times. If you've got 13 hazards, so more hazards than necessary, if 10 of those 13 hazards have all of the columns filled in, you meet the criteria. And what that means is, if you've got 13 hazards, you can get away with 3 of those hazards having some kind of problem, and you can still pass. So it's good practice to have more than 10 hazards, because that gives you a bit of room to make a mistake, because you are allowed to make a mistake if you've got 13 hazards. So when I talk about mistakes, it could be maybe on one of your hazards, you didn't put down an injury in your who might be harmed and how. Maybe on another hazard, maybe you forgot to put a job title. Maybe one of your job titles is missing. In that case, that hazard, it just doesn't count. Maybe on another hazard, you've missed a critical control measure, which is legally required, in which case that entire hazard just gets ignored. This is a problem with one of the columns, therefore that hazard does not count towards one of your 10 hazards. I hope this is making sense. You need 10 hazards where all the columns are filled in correctly, and it's better to have more than 10. So that's what we're trying to do on the risk assessment form. So let's walk through it and go through the criteria on how to fill in every single column. The first column is the hazards and the hazard categories. And this is where a lot of people make mistakes. So where to start? Basically, I would start by just looking at your workplace. So if you've got an office, just look around your office and look for hazards and use these hazard categories as a checklist. These hazard categories are in the guidance document. So if you go to your guidance, if I go up here, there it is. It's on page, what is that? That's page 7 of the guidance document. So you've got access to them in your guidance. Now, you want to get 11 to 13 hazards. Just to be clear, these are not the hazard categories. The numbers are not hazard categories. The hazard categories are these things. So noise is a category. Radiation is a category. Hazardous substances is a category. Work-related driving is a category. Fire, work equipment, machinery. Those are the categories. And you must use those categories and know nothing else. Nothing else. So let's have a look at an office. Here's just a basic call center. Normal call center. It doesn't look unsafe, does it? It looks pretty tidy, doesn't it? I would just use my hazard categories as like a checklist. So I would ask myself, do I have any noise? Well, I can walk around and ask people, are there any noise hazards here? And they go, yeah, actually there are. Sometimes we get feedback from the headset. Sometimes the headsets malfunction. We get these loud, high-pitched sounds, very loud, very painful. Okay, I'll write that down. It's one of my hazards. Do we have any vibration hazards? No, no vibrating tools, no vehicles. Great. Do we have any radiation hazards? No. Do we have any mental ill health hazards? Yes. Can you see how I'm working my way across the checklist here? Yes, no, no, yes. Right, so what's mental ill health? They tell me we've got unrealistic sales targets. Okay, write that down. Do we have any violence? Yeah, we do. We sometimes get aggressive and abusive customers on the phone. Verbal abuse. Okay. Do we have any substance abuse? Yeah, maybe. Not really. A little bit, maybe. Do we have any work-related upper limb disorders? Yes, lots of those, because we use display screen equipment and workstations. And you can see the limited adjustability. You can see how the things are just too low compared to, look at this guy, he's really tall. Look at where his head is. His head's there, but the monitor's down here. Things are just not at the right height. So that's a hazard. Do we have any manual handling? Yes, we do. We carry around the paper boxes. Do we have any load handling equipment? No. We don't have any barrows, any trolleys, no cranes. Do we have any health, welfare, and work environment hazards? Yes, we've got glare from the windows coming onto the computer monitors, which can cause eye strain. Do we have any work at height? Yes, we use some steps, small steps to change light bulbs. Any confined spaces? No. Any lone working? Yes. We've got some managers work alone after the office is closed to catch up on paperwork. Do we have any slips and trips? Yes. In fact, we've got two of these. We've got trip hazards like rucksacks around the desks. We've got some trading cables, problems with the carpet. We've also got some slip hazards where sometimes liquids get spilt in the kitchen and in the toilets, drops of water. Do we have any vehicle hazards? No. Do we have any driving hazards? No. Do we have any work equipment and machinery hazards? Yes, we have photocopiers, printers, and shredders, but I haven't put that on my risk assessment. Why not? I decided not to. Simple as that. I've already got 10. Have we got a fire hazard? Yes, everywhere's got a fire hazard. We have paper and furniture near computers and extension cables. So we have a source of fuel, we have a source of ignition. That's a fire hazard. Do we have any electrical hazards? Yes, we do. We've got various electrical appliances like the computers, the telephones, kitchen appliances. These can become damaged and expose live wires. There we go. I've got 12 hazards. I could add some work equipment and machinery hazards if I want to as well. It's an office and I've got loads of hazards. So it's really not a problem. So that's what I would do with your workplace. Use your hazard categories as a checklist and just have a look around, and you'll very quickly come up with a list of hazards that you can put on your risk assessment. Now, let me give you a big fat warning at this point, because some of you might be thinking, oh, that looks nice. That looks lovely. Let me take a screenshot of that. All right, easy, Tiger, easy. Do not copy the hazards that I've put on this presentation. That is called plagiarism. That is called malpractice. I've done this webinar before. I've shown it to other people. If they used these hazards and you use them as well, the automated system is going to detect similarities between your work and someone else's work. Just look at these statistics here. These are the latest ethical malpractice statistics from NEBOSH. They identified nearly 1,700 learners who cheated and issued over 2,000 penalties, and they banned 463 people. You do not want to be one of those statistics, believe me. So they are very, very good at catching people at cheating. So please do not copy the examples that I just gave you there. So what do you do with those? Those you're going to put on your risk assessment document. They just go in there. So basically, here's your risk assessment document. Type them into there once you've got your list. That's what you do with it. So you're going to fill in that entire hazard column. 11 to 13 hazards. You must have a minimum of 5 hazard categories, and that's easy, easy. No one even tries to do that. It just comes naturally. Key thing though, all of your hazards must be very different. You can't have duplicates. So for example, you probably are not going to have 2 noise hazards. You're not going to have 2 fire hazards, right? Because the harms are the same. The who might be harmed and how is going to be exactly the same in both noise hazards, both fire hazards. And then in terms of control measures, the control measures are the same as well. Let's say you've got a noisy machine and a noisy drill. The who might be harmed and how is the same. The control measures are the same. What's the point of putting it down twice on your risk assessment? The examiner is going to say, they're pretty much the same thing. I will ignore the second one. Yeah? Make sure they're all different. Now, some hazards you can have 2 of the same type. You can have 2 manual handling hazards, but they have to be 2 very different types of manual handling. One might be carrying and lifting, and the other might be pushing. 2 very different things. Different control measures, different harms. You might have 2 work equipment and machinery hazards. One might involve rotating parts. One might involve something sharp. Different harms, different control measures. That's okay. If you take a look at the NEBOSH sample, you can actually see they've got some examples of hazards which are the same. So if I scroll up, let's go right up here. They've got a hazardous substance hazard there with dust. And they've got all kinds of controls there to control the dust. And if we scroll down, you'll see another hazardous substance one, this time with oil. Very different hazardous substance, different harm, different controls. That's okay, but they must be different. So duplicates will be ignored. Now, a critical error to avoid in the hazard column is that you must not invent fake hazard categories. Only use these. If it's not on that list, it's not a category. So I often see this, people write down falling objects. Take a good look at this. Can you see falling objects on that list? The correct answer is no. And that means the falling objects is not accepted. And what does that mean? It means that if you get the hazard category wrong, that entire hazard will be discounted. It will not count as one of your 10 hazards. So get the hazard category right. Very simple thing to do is to get that right. Another critical mistake to avoid is confusing hazards with harms. A hazard is not a harm. A hazard is something with the potential to cause harm. A hazard is not the harm. So let me explain that. So on the left, we've got hazards. The hazards cause the harms. So a conveyor with rotating rollers, that's a hazard. That will cause entanglement, amputation, scalping. The electrical appliances here, they will cause electrocution, electric shock. The manual handling, the manual lifting, that will cause herniated discs, cut to the hands, broken feet. Can you see how there's a difference between a hazard and a harm? Now this is important because a lot of people write down harms in their hazard column. They'll put a harm in here. They'll say risk of skin irritation, or they'll say risk of hearing damage, or risk of back injury, or possible cuts from knives. So no, those are harms. Don't want the harms there. We want hazards in the hazard column, and the harms, they belong in the who might be harmed and how column. So someone's commenting here in the chat, hazards are the unsafe act or condition in relation to the work activity that has the potential to cause harm. That's almost correct. That's not quite correct. So an unsafe action is not necessarily a hazard. An unsafe action is not necessarily a hazard. All right? Scissors are a hazard. The unsafe action is me maybe using the scissors to, I've got a cardboard box, so I'm trying to slice it open and nearly stabbing myself. That's an unsafe action. That action is not the hazard. That's the incident. The unsafe action might go in the who might be harmed and how column. Yeah, so the hazard would be the pair of scissors. Harms belong in the who might be harmed and how column. Now, will you fail? Here, no, it's a key point though. Will you fail for putting a harm in that box? No. You will fail if there's no hazard in the box. If you want to write down a hazard and a harm, if you want to say risk of cutting yourself with the scissors, that's probably kind of going to be okay because you've got scissors in there. If you say possible collision with vehicles when vehicles drive next to the walkway, something like that, yeah, it's okay to put too much information. Just make sure there is an actual hazard in there. So an example, people put down stress as a hazard. Stress is not a hazard. Stress is the adverse effect. Stress is the illness. Stress is the harm. So what causes the stress? That would be the hazard. Here's an example. We've got that dust hazard I told you about. And here we put the harms. Asthma, we've got the dermatitis, we've got the eye irritation, and so on. So make sure you put your hazards and your harms in the right boxes. Also, a hazard is not a missing control measure. It's very common for people to say things like lack of manual handling training. That's a hazard. Lack of security, lack of site security, trespassers entering the site. It's not a hazard. Oh, but the trespassers can, I got this the other day actually. Someone was asking me about school. But the trespassers can enter the school and climb up onto the roof. Like, it's not a hazard. But they could fall through the fragile roof. Ah, the fragile roof's a hazard. The person entering the site is not a hazard. Unless they're going to attack you. If they're a violent intruder, fine, they're a hazard if they're a violent intruder. But if it's just a teenager playing, right, they're not a hazard. The fragile roof is the hazard, yeah? So the lack of security is not a hazard. So what do you do with it then? Because you're going to have this situation, aren't you, where you've got lack of something, lack of guarding, lack of training. What do you do with that? Well, you put that in the control measure column. So if you've got a lack of something, you would put it in this column here. You would put an action to provide the training, an action to provide the guard, or to fix the security issues, to install CCTV, to build a fence, something like that. So if you look at these, you will not find any lack of. You will not find any blocked fire exits. A blocked fire exit is not a hazard. A fire is a hazard. Yeah. So you just type in an action to fix that problem there in the control action column. Another mistake is that risk assessments are not inspections. To be clear, when you do a risk assessment, you're not doing an inspection. You're not walking around finding things that are wrong. You are looking for potential hazards. Not just, now you might find some actual hazards, sure, an actual hazard that is there in front of you right now, today, sure. But you're also looking for potential hazards, for foreseeable hazards, not just the things you can see today. A common mistake with risk assessments is that I'll see things like this. They'll basically do an inspection instead of a risk assessment. They'll spot one damaged cable. They'll find one little thing that's broken. They'll find a couple of light bulbs that need changing. And they'll risk assess these things. And I'm like, dude, it's like that. You haven't studied your course properly. You're getting mixed up between inspections and risk assessments. That's an inspection. I would never in a million years put those on a risk assessment. They belong on a maintenance report. That's all. Just report it. Just report it so it gets fixed. Quarantine it, condemn it, whatever you need to do. Just go and fix it. Don't waste time risk assessing that, because the obvious fix is to just fix it. What instead we're looking for are things like this, things which you might be able to see but often can't. So for example, spilt liquids in the kitchen. What if on the day I do my risk assessment there are no spilt liquids in the kitchen? I can't see them because there aren't any. But I know, and this is where sources of information comes in. A risk assessment is more than just looking around, looking at the hazards. You are asking people questions. What's the greatest risk here? What can hurt you here? What kinds of accidents have happened here before? And you will check the incident records. What kind of accidents have happened in the past? You will check the manufacturer's manuals. What kinds of things can go wrong with this machine? These are not things you can see, but these are things that could happen. These are things that are foreseeable. And so you write those types of hazards on your risk assessment. Question here. In hazard category, is noise alone a hazard, or is it excessive noise? Okay, so your hazard, when you write your hazard like this, you must have what NEBOSH would call the potential for harm. You must show the potential for harm. So you can't just write down noise from the machine. You've got to have something like loud noise, excessive noise, unrealistic sales targets. So don't just write down sales targets, write down unrealistic sales targets. Don't just write down use of workstations. Have constant use of workstations, limited adjustability. Notice here we've got 8 kilos, we've got 15 meters. Yeah, so showing you don't just say manual handling of boxes. Well, can you at least say heavy boxes? Can you say repetitive manual handling, carrying it over a long distance? Here we've got 2 meters. What else we got? I mean, that one kind of shows the potential for harm for when it says around the desks, near or around the desks. Potential for harm here, you've got the, whoops, let me go back. You've got the damaged and live wires there. The voltage, yeah? So be quite descriptive with your hazard to show the potential for harm. Don't just write down noise by itself. Noise is not a hazard. Noise is a hazard category. By itself, noise will not get you anything. You've got to describe what the noise is and show the potential for harm. So that brings me to specifics. You've got to make sure you've got specifics. Don't be vague. Add the detail. And this is what I'm talking about. Add detail to show that potential for harm. So don't just write down vehicles. Yeah, don't just write that down. Write down what type of vehicle. Don't just write down flammable substances, but down the type of flammable substances. And add in the ignition sources as well. Can you see the difference? If we look at the sample here, you can see there's quite a lot of detail on the sample. Yeah, it's not a huge amount of detail, but it's specific. Look at that. It tells you exactly what the substance is. You don't have to write lots of information, but you do have to be specific and give the detail. Questions in the chat. What am I going to do if my workplace doesn't have incident records, although it's a large entity? Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's fine. Because your incident records, you will talk about normally you'll talk about the incident records in this bit here. This is in part 1. How you identify the hazards. Because here it talks about checking the accident book. Remember, part 1 is a non-critical section. You cannot fail for part 1. Now you could write down, just be honest, you can say, I asked to check the incident records, but they don't have any. just write that down. It will not cause you to fail. It's fine. Another question. Can I have 2 fire hazards when the fire door has been wedged open using a wooden block, 2 foam exercise mats stored directly beneath the heating unit? Okay, so first thing I would say there, so a fire door wedged open is not a hazard. It's not a hazard. It can't hurt you. A fire door wedged open can't hurt you. What hurts you? The fire. Smoke. That hurts you. Fire door wedged open is a broken control measure. So let me go back to where I was a moment ago in the presentation. If I can find the right slide. It will be, oh, so many slides. I'll just skip back this way, be easier. It is, there you go, it's one of these. It's a control measure issue. If your fire doors are being wedged open, address it in that column there. Put in place a process to stop the fire doors from being wedged open. That could be maybe like a daily check on the fire doors, confiscating the wedges, putting some kind of automatic door closing device so the fire door just closes by itself when you need it to close, but it stays open the rest of the time. You know, put in some measures to make sure the fire door does not get wedged open. So definitely it's a problem and it needs fixing, but your hazard is fire. And a fire hazard, this will come up a little bit later on, a fire hazard is a source of fuel and a source of ignition. So foam mats are a source of fuel and the heating unit is a source of ignition. So that's a good fire hazard. In your control measures for that fire hazard, you should put something down to address the fire door problem, for sure. Great question. Thank you for asking that. It's a wonderful question. Where are we? I think I'm here. Yeah, okay. Another critical hazard with these is that hazards are not the same things as activities. An activity is an activity, and activities have many hazards. So use of the grinder is not a hazard. It's an activity. Now, this is your hazard category. This is your hazard. Just for a moment, let's just ignore the hazard category because the examiner is marking this. Is this hazard description suitable? And by itself, use of a grinder does not tell us what the hazard is. Is it vibration? Is it noise? Electricity? Debris? Dust? Sparks? Training cable? Which one of these hazards are you addressing? It's not clear, is it? So instead, what we want you to do is write down the hazard in full. I know you wrote vibration there, I know that. But write it again here and make sure you specify what type of vibration, because there are 2 types. you've got hand, arm, and whole body. And it matters. You are showing the examiner that you know that a handheld grinder causes hand-arm vibration, obviously. Right? But you have to say that. Otherwise, the examiner's like, what type of vibration is it? If you don't tell them what type of vibration it is, they're not allowed to guess. They're not allowed to assume that you know the difference between the two types. So write down the type of vibration, and then just give a little bit, show that potential for harm. And here you've got some potential for harm. That's a very high level of vibration. You don't have to write down the numbers. You could write down excessive use, large amounts of vibration. You could write something like that down. That would be okay too. Make sure you put the potential for harm in there and specify the type of vibration. Don't just use an activity. Fire hazards are peculiar. Like I just said, fuel plus ignition source. Notice this one here. We've got ignition sources, fuel sources, vapors, flammable atmosphere. They've got both. If you don't have that in there, it's not a fire hazard. If it's just an ignition source, it's not a fire hazard. If it's just a fuel source, it's not a fire hazard. It's fuel plus ignition. That's it. All right. Okay, we've just done the hazard column. There's a lot to take in, isn't there? This is why I say do it column by column, because there's so much to take in. Now, to help you with that column, go to our YouTube channel. Go to playlists. There's a playlist on NG2, IG2 hazards. If you're writing a vehicle hazard, go look at it's very short videos, which will remind you of the key information that has to go into that hazard, and then you can write your own. So you use that. And also, if you go to our YouTube channel, you've got all the daft mistakes. Everything I've just told you is in the daft mistakes videos. Again, short, funny videos, quite fun to watch. Just watch those, loads of examples, and then write all of your hazards in one go. Once you've written your hazards in one go, go to the who might be harmed and how column. And here you have to include three things. You have to write down who, you have to write down an incident, and you have to write down a specific injury. If any one of those three things is missing, then that hazard will not count as one of your 10 hazards. So for example, you could say employees could be injured, and that will not work. What employees? Which employees? Can you be more specific? What incident? How can they be injured? And what type of injury? That's not going to work. Instead, there's a job title, there's an incident, there's an injury. Is that okay? No, that's not okay. That's not okay either, because I haven't got a specific injury. Injured does not tell me how the injury is going to happen. Now, if I say site operatives could be hit by moving vehicles and crushed or killed, all of a sudden, bang, that's fine. That works. That's great. So I'll give that. Should we give that a green tick? Just make a change. There you go, green tick. That one's good. Here's an example on the left-hand side. We've got, let me change color on my pen. We've got the workers in the spray booth area. Great. So there's your job title. Inhalation of paint mist. There's your incident. And then you've got the tightening of the chest, the illness, the asthma, respiratory disease. Asthma is a specific type of injury. So got who, got an incident, got an injury. Bang, it's done. You need to follow that process on every single one of them. If we go to our risk assessment here, we can do the same thing. We've got this one here, workers in the garage. We've got the get an electric shock, suffer electrocution, fibrillation. You've got all three there. If we go down a bit, let me get rid of my drawings on the screen. We've got mechanics. We've got the handling the substances. We've got the dermatitis and skin cancers. That's it. That's what you got to do on all of them. If you forget just one, it's a problem. On the health hazards, you should also consider the acute and chronic effects where relevant. Some hazards have both acute and chronic effects. You should mention both. The one we just looked at had, for example, the tightening of the chest. That's a short-term. It says short-term issue there, tightening of the chest, and then it talks about longer-term illnesses like asthma. So where relevant, put both of those things down. Like wood dust can cause a runny nose in the short term, and it can cause nasal cancer in the longer term. Another example here from the sample. What do we got? We've got the irritant dust on the skin. So eye irritation, that's a short-term effect. Dermatitis is a longer-term effect. Make sure you cover both in there. Right, that's quite easy, isn't it? Who might be harmed and how? 3 things. Make sure you do all 3. Control measures then. So where are we? We are now on columns 3 and 4. We're doing these 2 columns here. Now these work together. You can have lots of controls in column 3 and few or none in column 4. And you can have lots of controls in column 4 and very few or none in column 3. I think, to be honest though, I would say none in column 3, none. That's very, very rare. There's usually something in column 3, even if it's just some general awareness. Or you can have the controls mixed across both columns. So you can have basically lots in here and none in there. Or you can have very few in here and lots in there. Or you can have like this one where you've basically got a bit of an even balance. It's mostly the same. So they work together. And it says in the guidance document exactly what I've just said. It said all of these scenarios, both of these scenarios are just fine because they are realistic. Now, for those of you who work in a very well-developed workplace, like some big international chemical company where everything is safe, most of your hazards are going to be well controlled. But you will need to come up with at least 3 further actions somewhere on your risk assessment, because you are in part 3, you're going to have to take 3 actions and then justify those 3 actions. So you must find 3 actions somewhere, but everything else can be fully controlled. That's absolutely fine. So don't stress too much about that. And if you work in a terrible workplace, then obviously you're going to have lots and lots and lots of further actions. Now, one of the critical errors that you want to avoid with this is failure to introduce all of the legally required controls. Your risk assessment should bring you into legal compliance, which means it should have all of the legally required controls, either in this because you're already doing it, or in this column because you're recommending that we do it. So for example, if I go up here on this dust hazard, what kinds of legally required controls are there? Well, we're required to use some ventilation. We've got extraction systems. We're required to do some training, for example. We're required to do maintenance on the ventilation system and so on. So we have to make sure all of our legal requirements are covered. Now, if you're a national student, a UK student doing the NGC, you must refer to UK legislation. And when I say legislation, no guidance documents, no approved codes of practice. I really do mean legislation, law, acts and regulations. Health and Safety at Work Act and all the regulations, not the ACOPs, not the guidance. And you have to look at all the legal requirements that apply to this particular hazard. So for example, if it's a crane hazard or a forklift hazard, you might have 12 monthly LOLA for examinations, because that is something in the LOLA regulations that is required. If you've got a noise hazard, the noise control of noise at work regulations requires health surveillance, hearing tests for noise. If you're an IGC student, you have different legislation. You've got ILO conventions, recommendations, and codes of practice. Again, you have to make sure all of your legal requirements are included. And so you have to go and look up the relevant convention or recommendation or code of practice, or maybe all 3 in that case, and make sure that all your legal requirements are included. And that might be things like training in manual handling or order guarding. So what does that kind of look like? Well, let me just skip forward here a little bit. This is the table of contents of the control of noise at work regulations. I mean, and to find this, you literally just go to Google, type in control of noise at work regulations. I don't want the HSC one. No, I just want the law. Can I have the law regulations 2005? Let's get a law. There it is, legislation website. Go here, bang, there it is. And I can see some legal requirements. I can see that we have to control noise through various measures. We need hearing protection in some cases. We need to maintain our equipment to keep it quiet. We need health surveillance. We need information like maybe some safety signs, instruction and training. I need to make sure that all those things are included if they are actually legally required in this case. So if the noise is above, if the noise is around here in the action value or limit value, we're going to need some PPE, and we're going to need to take some action to reduce the noise. So for each of your hazards, have a look at the legislation which applies, and then make sure you've got the relevant control measures. So yeah, and you have to do that on all of them. For international students, IGC students, here you've got a code of practice on noise and vibration. Have a look at that. And in here you'll see things like assessing noise exposure. You'll have things like the control methods are in there. Have a look at the control methods, controlling at source. Lots of engineering controls in this section here. And you'll have noise sampling, noise measurement and monitoring and so on. So make sure you have a look at those things. These things are going to help you because a lot of people really struggle to think of what controls can I put down. Well, look at the law. Look at the guidance documents. Just look at your course materials. Here, it's like this. Here you go. This is not for the NGC course. This is RMS Firebook. You got a study book of some kind, yeah? Whether it's Compassa's study book or someone else's study book, have a look in there. Now, obviously, don't just copy what it says. You have to take what it says and make it an action. Make it a task. It's like do this, install this, implement this, begin this. You can't just copy the law down where it says provide training. You've got to write down something kind of useful, something that looks like this. Like improve the washing facilities. Look into the possibility of setting up a health surveillance program for all affected workers. So write them down as actions, like a job you want someone to do. What did I say there? Yeah, make sure you cover all of these, just this basic standard stuff like training, signage, safe systems of work and procedures, monitoring, supervision. Like put that down for most of your hazards where it's applicable, of course. Like nearly all hazards will require training. I expect training on just about everything. Safety signs on pretty much everything. Everything needs a procedure. Everything needs monitoring just about. Make sure you get it on there. Look, it's got there, monitoring system. So they're introducing gloves, and then they're going to have a monitoring system to make sure the gloves are actually being worn. It's very, very easy to come up with lots of actions if you follow that approach. The next thing with your controls, and I've seen loads of people fail for this, is that they don't use the hierarchy of controls very well. You must use the hierarchy. Wherever possible, you must try to eliminate, try to substitute, or try to engineer things out, wherever possible. Do not just rely on administrative controls of PPE. You will fail if the examiner sees a hazard, like a manual handling hazard. How do you use the hierarchy? You avoid it. Give them a mechanical handling device of some kind. Or at the very least, give them a barrow or a trolley or something mechanical to make that lifting easier. I had a student the other day, I looked at it, and they'd written down back braces. Or was it training and back braces? And I looked at the current measures. Oh man, the current measures. I hope you're not on the call. Sorry if I'm embarrassing you on the call. But the current measures were, it's mostly women who work in this workplace. We have some guys. We give the manual handling to the guys. That's the current control. And the extra controls were train the guys and give the guys back braces. Like, why don't you give them trolleys or barrows or a forklift or a pallet truck or an electric pallet stacker? Don't want to see back braces on your risk assessment. That might work in certain countries, sure. That's not going to work on a NEBOSH project because back braces actually make the task less safe in most cases because people try to pick things up which they really shouldn't be picking up. So make sure you use the hierarchy at every opportunity. Now, you might say, Will, I can't eliminate everything. Oh, okay, fair enough. But can you substitute? And they're like, well, not really. Kind of difficult to substitute things. Like, I don't care. I don't care how difficult it is. Put it on your risk assessment. I've got a noise hazard, Will. I can't put noise barriers and enclose. I can't build a massive noise enclosure for the office. It'll cost too much money. I don't care. I don't care. I couldn't care less. Just put it on your NG2 project, for goodness sake. Show the examiner that you understand how to control this hazard. And to be clear, this is not cheating. This is not an unrealistic situation. You would not be the first person to make a recommendation on a risk assessment and then the boss says, not doing that, it's too expensive. I've done that loads of times. I write it on my risk assessment, knowing full well they'll say no, but my job is to put it on the risk assessment as an extra control. That shows the boss what the boss must do, and it shows the examiner that you get it, yeah? So don't worry about, is it realistic, is it practical? No one cares. Just put it down. It's up to the boss to reject it later, yeah? Remember, this is an academic project. You're not expected to actually do the things you say on your risk assessment. This is an academic project. So you can put things down which maybe you know the boss will never say yes to it. But if it's a good control for that hazard in a real workplace, put it down. So don't stress about that. Make sure you use the hierarchy everywhere you can. When I say use the hierarchy, like try to eliminate, substitute, or engineer it out. Notice here on our sample, it talks about dilution ventilation. That's an engineering control. It talks about an enclosed area with local exhaust ventilation. Again, it's an engineering control. On-tool dust extraction systems. It's an engineering control. Really good use of it there. Now, just to clear something up, I get this question a lot from people who like to overthink things. Listen, you do not need to do this. You do not need to structure your controls like this for the examiner. It's not required, where people write down eliminate. Consider changing the process to... You're not required to write your controls out using any kind of order. You're not required to put headings of the hierarchy. You don't need to do that. Don't overcomplicate it. If we look at the NEBOSH sample, NEBOSH samples here, they don't have any headings. It's not in any particular order. So just write it down. Just write it down. Someone's asking a question, which I'm looking at now in the chat. Can I have health, welfare, and work environment, housekeeping trolley obstructing the corridor? Well, I would say there that that's not a health, welfare, and work environment hazard. So straight away, you've got the wrong hazard category. So what you need to do is go and review that section of the course and see what's covered in that category. I'll let you know. Basically, health, welfare, and work environment is lighting and extremes of temperature that can cause heat exhaustion, not burns, that's a different one. Heat exhaustion or cold temperatures. That's health, welfare, and work environment. Obstructions in the workplace, that could be a trip hazard, maybe. It could be movement of people and vehicles in the workplace. If people crash into it, bump into it, that could be a movement of people hazard. So first things first, get your hazard category right. But that's not your question. That's not your question. Your question is, can I have this hazard of the trolley obstructing the corridor and still have another hazard, a manual handling hazard of pushing and pulling the luggage trolley? Yeah, yes, you can. You can. So great question, by the way. Really useful question. So let's have a look at an example. So basically, you've got a trolley, and the trolley is creating two different types of hazard, yeah? Let me give you this as an example. Let's say we've got an angle grinder. We used this example earlier. You've got an angle grinder. Angle grinder creates noise. You could say excessive noise from use of the angle grinder. Say it's 92 dB used for over 4 hours a day. There you go. And then I could say excessive hand arm vibration from the angle grinder over 5 meters per second squared. There you go. It's the same piece of equipment, two different hazards. So for your trolley, yes, you can have manual handling of the trolley, and you can also have another hazard around the obstruction of the corridor as well. No problem. Great question. Moving on, last thing, I think this is the last thing on columns 3 and 4. Make sure you reduce the risk to as low a level as you possibly can. Make sure you do everything that's reasonably practicable. The examiner has got to be able to look at your controls and think, wow, that risk is well controlled. That risk is now low. Brilliant. Best approach is just to have lots of controls. If you look at this, just like look at the controls. There are loads of them. Lots of controls is best. And make them good ones using the hierarchy as much as you can. Now, in terms of controls, don't have rules. A rule is not a control. We want management controls, management actions. If you look here, these are rules. Do a pre-use check. Don't use the equipment unless you've been trained. Always tidy up the area. These are rules. I'll be honest with you. As a safety professional, I do not want to see any rules on my risk assessments. If I see a rule on a risk assessment, I know that person does not know the difference between a risk assessment and a safe system of work. Rules belong on the SOP, or the safe system of work, or the method statement. The rules are something you tell an operative, an employee, a worker. Do this and don't do that. These are the rules. What we put on a risk assessment is the actions we take to make sure rules are followed. So we would have things like deliver training on this hazard. So train people in how to use the ladder correctly. So you would never write down on a risk assessment, do not overreach on the ladder. Always use 3 points of contact on the ladder. No. That does not go on your risk assessment. That goes on your SOP. What we put on a risk assessment is provide training in the safe selection and use of ladders. Provide supervision all day on the correct safe working use of the ladders. Carry out weekly spot checks to check that people are using the ladders correctly. You never say to someone, always check your ladder before use. No, that's a rule and it goes on the SOP. You might say, introduce a pre-use check system, which is recorded by the worker. And then another action to say, on a weekly basis, check that the pre-use inspections are actually being done and filled in. Yeah, we want managerial actions and controls on your risk assessments, not rules. Because I'll tell you what, the issue you'll have, if you put down rules here, who's the job title? Who's the responsible person of a rule? Where are you going to put down operatives? All operatives, all operatives. And you've got a problem there. Like, no. You can't have everyone as your responsible person. If everyone is a responsible person, then no one's responsible. And that's the problem with putting down rules. You'll end up with no job title. Well, sorry, you'll have no time scale either. What's the time scale when it's a rule? It's always, all the time, every day, before shift starts. No. Your time scales must be specific. When you will implement the action. So none of that, thank you. Do this. We've got things like, we've got an action. These are managerial actions. Do this and do that. They're not rules. And they have a specific time scale. And then they have a specific person. Or maybe just a couple of people, maybe. Max. All right, I've got a question here. Right, question. I think I've already answered this live. So, but the question is, when writing the further control methods, are we to write first elimination before putting down replacements? No, you don't have to. No, to be absolutely clear. You do not have to write down your controls in the order of the hierarchy. No. If you want to, you can. You won't fail for that, but you do not have to. Again, this is an example of getting distracted by non-critical things. Focus on the marking criteria. Focus on what I'm telling you to do and what I'm telling you not to do. Other stuff, do what you like. No one cares. If you want to order things as per the hierarchy, fine. Knock yourself out. It's really cool. It's really clever. But that will not cause you to pass and it will not cause you to fail. So it doesn't matter. It's just a distraction. Just write down some really good stuff. Say great, brilliant, good. Glad you understand it. You're very welcome. So now there's only, I said earlier, don't worry about the formatting. There's only one formatting error I see which causes an issue. And I've seen this. Now this is the real NG2 from a real student. And there's a bit of a mess going on here. This student has misunderstood how to do this. Now, to explain this, let me just show you the sample. So notice this. We've got one big box here, and we just write in this box a list of all of the existing controls. And in this one here, we then want a list of every single action. And notice that there's no need to link this action to anything in here. Like they don't link, yeah? These are just two separate lists. This is list number 1. This is list number 2. That's it. List number 1, list number 2. There's no link between them. The student here actually, for some reason, thought that they had to link it. So notice we've got training and training. They said, right, I do this on training, and I now need to do more training. I've done this risk assessment here, and I need to review the risk assessment. I've got some job rotation here and stuff, but there's nothing more I need to do on that. I do a toolbox talk, but there's nothing more I need to do. This is just a complete misunderstanding of how the risk assessment form is filled in. And then look what they did here. Look, they've got no further action here. No further action. But they then put a responsible job person. Why have they got a responsible person when they're not responsible for anything? There's nothing in there. It's blank. So the examiner looked at this, got super confused. I went, why have I got all these job titles here? All right. Just a complete misunderstanding. So please try and lay it out correctly the way the examiner expects, which is basically that's one list of things, and then you've got a list of controls, and then each control has timescale and then an owner, timescale owner. That's it. But this column here is completely separate to like all of that. Hopefully that makes sense in terms of the layout. All right, let me look at the questions again. Someone's asking, am I providing a recording of this session later? Yeah, you'll get an email tomorrow with a link to recording, and it's going to go onto YouTube as well. So if you need to go, sure, you can go. Just make a note of what time it is so you can find where you are. But you won't get to ask me any questions if you go, that's the thing. Moving on. Avoid unnecessary discussion in the controls. This is where people get distracted and try to be clever. So look at this. There's currently a breach of the PUA regulations due to the lack of guarding on the power press. We will need to install additional guards and possibly a light curtain to make it safe. Unfortunately, we do not have the budget for these actions this year. In the meantime, we will need to provide safety signage, regular briefings, constant supervision, blah, 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 blah. None of that is necessary. We don't need that. It's a distraction. Look at this. Can you see any discussion in here? Any justification? Can you see any law? That's a big mistake people make. They write down law and it's like, well, what's that law doing in there? We don't need law in the further actions column. I do not want to see any law in the further actions column, ever. It's just one big fat mess, that is. So make sure there's no discussion there at all. Then make sure you do not put multiple actions in one. So back to the same example. This example we're all about. Look at how many actions are in there. Additional guards, a light curtain, signage, briefings, supervision. We have 5 separate actions in one timescale, one owner. No. Each one of those actions needs separating out by itself, and then each one needs a timescale, and each one needs an owner. That's a very common mistake. And you might think, well, that's a bit pedantic, isn't it? Come on, NEBOSH, why do you have to do that? No, seriously. This is about you showing that you know how to do action planning, because you can't do that in an action plan. It's just too jumbled, too confused. What you want is a list. Yeah. When you write a shopping list, you don't write it in a big paragraph format, do you? No, you write a list. Buy this, get this, do this. Yeah. It's just a list of jobs. That's an action plan. So do that. Make sure your controls are specific. Don't write things like PAT testing, PPE, training. These are too vague. Write it down with some specifics. Look at the detail on there. It says exactly what we need to do. Make sure each action has its own timescale. I saw this. This is a real NG2. The student failed. Where's my timescale? No timescale. The student assumed that this one here would go for both of these. But no, the examiner cannot assume that. The examiner will mark what they can read. We need timescales for each and every action. And the timescales have to be proportionate to the action. Some can be done very quickly, some will take longer. Don't stress too much over how long you give people, but a week, a month, 6 months, 3 months, that kind of works. If you look at the example there, in fact, let me just bring up the example here. Can you see 6 months, 6 months? Each and every one of them has a timescale. Each one has a timescale. To be clear, if you just miss one timescale on an action, that entire hazard will not count as one of your 10 hazards. Yeah, it's as harsh as that. That's the rule. It's a very easy rule to comply with. So please comply with the rule. Very, very simple. Attention to detail matters. We're missing an office manager here as well. We're missing a job title. So make sure you got your job titles in there too. Timescales, never use frequencies on your NG2 projects or IG2 projects. So daily, always, annually, immediately, don't want any of that. The guidance is very clear. We must use a specific start or end time. So months, 1 week, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. It's a start or end time. Now, question you might ask there is, what if it's an ongoing activity? Like I want to do manual handling training every 3 years, yeah? Or I want to do an inspection every month or a briefing every week, right? When are you going to start? When will you start to do the inspections? When will you start to do the manual handling training? When will you start to do the briefings? That's what you write down. I will start the briefings next week, 1 week. I will start to do the inspections this month, 1 week. I will start to do the manual handling training when? Well, I'll organize the next round of training in 6 months' time. And from that point, it will be every 3 years. So I'll say 6 months. Provide manual handling training every 3 years. 6 months is my timescale. That's when it starts. It has to be a start time or an end time. Someone's asking, approximately how much time can we put aside for a risk assessment? I'm not sure how to understand that. Are you suggesting that a risk assessment is a control measure? Well, it can be, kind of. It's not really a control measure though, is it? Does risk assessing something control the hazard? Not really. Put it down by all means. It won't cause you to fail, but don't rely on the control measure to keep things, don't rely on the risk assessment to keep things safe. How long does it take? I don't know. How long does it take? It depends on the risk assessment. If it's a general risk assessment, not very long. If it's a DSE assessment, this week. If it's a DSE assessment for 1,000 people, a couple of months, 3 months maybe, you have to get through those people. If it's a very technical fire and explosion assessment, maybe a month or 2 months, you decide. Use your professional judgment to decide how long that. The examiner's not going to query your timescales too much, as long as it's not crazy short for the task. So building a new building in a week is not going to happen. And also some things are very easy, like starting weekly briefings. It's not going to take you a year to do that. You can do that within a month. Someone's asking, I'm working in a chemical lab. Do you think I can cover 10 hazard categories in the lab? You do not need to cover 10 hazard categories. You need 5 hazard categories and you need 10 hazards, to be clear. Can you find 10 hazards in a chemical lab? Yeah, I found 13, 14 hazards in an office. I'm pretty sure you can find them in a chemical lab. No problem. Just use your hazard categories as a checklist. Any noise hazards, vibration hazards, any, substance abuse, violence, mental ill health. Just work your way through it. You might have 3 or 4 hazardous substances hazards, very different hazardous substances. You have some manual handling, you have some electrics, you've got some fire, you've got some mechanical equipment. In labs, you've got all kinds of chemical equipment, mechanical equipment. In the lab, you've got the spinners and the stirrers and stuff. You've got things that are hot as well, like flames. You've got loads of stuff in the chemical lab. It's easy. Timescale for yearly hearing tests, someone's asking. Well, the question is, when are you going to start the annual hearing tests? It's going to take you some time to get an occupational health provider who's got the equipment and the expertise to do those hearing tests. So you're going to have to get some quotations and sign a contract with a supplier, get the budget. All those are actions, by the way. Get quotations for the company to do the hearing tests. Get approval for the quotation. Sign the contract. And so you could put down timescales for each of those things. I'll get quotations this week. I will get approval within 1 month. I will sign the contract within 2 months. I will I will get everyone's hearing test done within what? It depends how many people you have. Got 1,000 people. It might take you 6 months to a year to get through them all. So you decide based on your circumstances. You're saying in the chat 12 months. Great, 12 months. Then. Put down 12 months if you think that's a realistic thing. Right. Now, if you have any columns that are blank, say, so let me show this to you on here. So if you've got a load of controls in here, yeah, I'll just type some random letters in. So that kind of represents all your existing controls in there, right? So you've got loads of stuff there. And the risk is under control. Everything legally required is done. The risk is low. You would write down in here, none. No further action needed. Or you could write something like, risk is under control. Something like that. Just text to the effect. So do not leave it blank. Do not leave it like this. Do not put NA like that. That's not right. Put down something like risk is under control. And then for the other columns, write down NA. This is important. You must put something in these boxes. NA, NA. Please put the NA. If you don't put the NA, you've got a problem. Risk under control, NA and NA. The responsible person should be a specific person. That's a critical error. You can't put this. All team leaders. If it's a group of people, it's not a specific person. You put down a job title. Maybe a couple of job titles, if appropriate. That's what you do. Make sure it's specific. And here again, we've seen this example before. Again, don't leave it blank. Every single one needs a job title. All right, make sure every single action has a job title. This I just mentioned a moment ago, so you've got to make sure that you've got something like this. No further action required, NA and NA. All good. Right, so just to summarize what we need. We need, in the hazard column, specific hazards that are well categorized. And you need a minimum of 10 good ones. You need a who, an incident, and a specific hazard? No, sorry, cross that out. A specific injury in there. That's a little error on my part. Injury in there. Who, incident, and injury. We need, in the controls, legal requirements covered. Everything reasonably practicable is done. Good use of the hierarchy of controls. And the risk at the end is low. Controls have got to be specific as well, not vague. Timescales, 1 for each action. No frequencies. Specific start and end time. No ASAPs. No immediatelys. Nothing like that. And then responsible person, 1 for each action, and no groups of people. I mean, that's kind of useful. That's basically a crib sheet for the whole risk assessment. You need a minimum of 10 hazards with all of the columns filled in like that. And if there's any error on any of these columns, that means that whole hazard doesn't count towards your 10. So if you've missed out a who, sorry, doesn't count. If you've missed out a legal requirement, sorry, that one doesn't count. If you've missed out one of your responsible people job titles, sorry, doesn't count. You got one of the categories wrong, sorry, doesn't count. That's why it's best to have about 13 hazards, really. That way you can afford the odd little mistake here and there. Phew, eh? Wow, okay, we're done for part 2. It is 7:05, my goodness. Well, I'm not pressured for time. I'll stay here as long as it needs. If you have any more questions, please put them in the chat or the Q&A. I am now going to go through part 3, which is also a critical section on this. Now, this is actually where most people fail. 2/3 of the people, in my experience, it's not an exact statistic. In my experience, 2/3 of those who fail for part 3. It is particularly hard to pass. You can make some mistakes on the risk assessment and still scrape through, but here, like, one mistake can really just catch you out. Thankfully, the marking criteria are very, very clear. So if you just do exactly what I'm telling you to do, you'll pass no problem. What it looks like is this. You've got 2 parts to it. You've got a moral, general, legal, and financial box, and then you've got 3 justification sheets. So you've got 4 bits of paper to fill in, basically. Let's start with the moral, general, legal, and financial arguments. So the guidance, first of all, says this. It says that for NGC students, you've got to cover the Health and Safety at Work Act. For IGC students, it says you've got to mention the duties under C155. I regularly see people just forget to include this, and it's literally just one sentence. It's just one sentence. Like, that's it. Failure to include that one sentence will mean your entire project fails, and it'll cost you time and money when you resubmit. And all you will do is you'll add that one thing in and it will pass. It's as harsh as that. It's very simple. The criteria requires it, so please put it in. This is the national one. NGG Limited must also comply with the Health and Safety at Work, etc. at 1974, which requires employers to ensure the health and safety of all employees and anyone who may be affected by their work, as well as far as reasons. You don't have to say exactly that. You can use different words. It's okay. You can say it in different ways, but you must meet this criteria here where it says it must cover duties that would apply to all workplace situations, such as the duties under the Health and Safety at Work Act. And same thing there. Basically the same thing. So make sure you put that in. So that's the first thing. Now, moral arguments. One of the failures is you don't put enough moral arguments in. Your moral arguments must include the impact on the injured people, the possible mental health impact on the injured person and colleagues who witnessed it, and the impact on the family. 3 things. That might include grief, money problems, social enjoyment. You kind of got it here. We've got a moral duty to protect all workers. It talks about the ill health conditions. It talks about the injuries. It talks about the major impact on the lives of their families and friends. It talks about the impact on the workers' mental health. It talks about the mental health of the workers who witness it. Right? It's all there. It's all there in the sample. Use different words, of course. Don't copy the sample. Use different words, but include those 3 things. For the general legal arguments, make sure you include what I just said, a reference to that law. Talk about the possibility of criminal enforcement action, like enforcement notices and prosecution. For example, we could see prohibition notices, improvement notices. And then you could talk about fines, possible civil claims. Now in here, I can't see a fine. Personally, I would put a fine in there, but we can see the civil claims. They're there. Make sure you cover all of those things. Financial arguments. The arguments should be specific, not generic. They should include a range of insured and uninsured costs, such as damage, compensation, fine, sick pay, overtime, and so on. Try and keep it specific to your organization. So try and talk about how your organization could suffer these costs. Try not to just list things too much. So here, if you look at this, look how that's quite specific. It talks about replacement equipment, infrastructure, if control is lost over a vehicle being moved around the workshop. Can you see how that's specific? Subsequently crashes through one of the garage walls. See how it's specific? It's not just a list of random costs. They've linked the costs to this workplace. So basically, your moral, general, legal, and financial arguments should kind of look like this. You've got 3 big sections. Just make sure you do that in there. You can mix them up. It's okay. You don't have to put them in that order. They can be jumbled. If we look at the sample here, if I go scroll down to where we have this in the sample, you'll see it's a little bit of a mess in here. We've got the legal bit. We've got a financial bit. We've got the law. But then there's a little bit of financial stuff here. Can you not see the numbers? Some finance in there. It mentions some compensation somewhere as well. So it's a little bit of a mess, but it's okay. It's okay. It doesn't have to be tidy. It doesn't have to be tidy. It talks about the costs there as well. It's fine. It does not have to be tidy. Just make sure you include the information. Right, the action sheets. Right, this is where it gets tricky. So you're going to have to fill 3 of these in. To do this, you need to choose 3 actions. I'm going to warn you, 1 mistake on 1 sheet causes the whole thing to fail. 1 mistake, 1 sheet. Attention to detail is really, really important with these sheets. So, first thing is this. The marking criteria is actually a little bit confusing on this. It says, has the learner chosen the 3 highest priority, most urgent actions? But then it contradicts itself and it says you don't have to agree with the selection. Right, it's just the justification that's more important. So don't stress too much about your choice of actions. People are like, oh, which one should I go for? Like, listen, just choose 3. Choose what you think are the highest priorities. Don't worry about the examiner disagreeing. The examiner's not going to disagree if you just go for the 3 highest priorities. I'm going to give you 1 mistake to avoid on this, and it's a very rare mistake. I've only seen it happen once. It has to be something where there's something exceptionally wrong with your action. And I saw this once. I saw a dangerous action. They failed for this. The examiner said this is a dangerous action because you would not train people to do this. That is a task that just needs to be eliminated. That can explode. You do not train workers to mix caustic soda and bleach safely. There is no safe way of doing it. You either eliminate that by buying it in a pre-mixed chemical, or you get a machine to mix it and use it as an engineering control. But you do not do that. People die doing that. So if your action is dangerous, yes, you can fail. But that is a very, very rare situation. So what do? Choose your 3, what you think are the 3 highest priority actions. And here's a key thing. I've personally had 2 people fail for this from the September cohort. So this is close to my soul, close to my heart. You must choose 3 actions from the risk assessment. I know it's stating the obvious, but let me just clarify what I mean. These 3 actions here are exactly actions that you find on the risk assessment. Exactly, as in they should be copied and pasted from the risk assessment. Do not change the wording. So if I look at the risk assessment, can you see how the words are exactly the same? Exactly, word for word. The only thing they've added in is a hazard category. When that's fine, that's fine. But that wording is exactly the same. Do not go changing the wording. I had one student, this is going back some months, they had quite a long action in the risk assessment, and they just got lazy. There's no other word for it. They just got lazy, and they typed in a short version of it. But when you read the short version, it changed the meaning of it. In the long version, there was actually a lot more going on in there. But then when they shortened it, it was actually only part of the action, right? They failed, just failed. Literally, all they did to pass when they resubmitted was that they copied the action and they pasted it in the box, saved the file, exported it as a PDF, and resubmitted. That was it. And it cost them over £100. And another 3 months of their life waiting for the results. That's it. And they went, oh, NEBOSH. Like, no. Don't go blaming NEBOSH on this. The marking criteria is very clear. I'm very clear. You've studied the tutorial. I know you've studied the tutorial because I've got your record showing me you've studied that tutorial. So no excuses. We're really clear on this. It's very easy to do. So easy. There's no excuse for getting it wrong. So copy and paste the action from the risk assessment in there. And here's another mistake people make. They try to be clever. Lots of people, they try to be clever. What they do is they group multiple actions in one. Don't do this. They'll say, all right, okay, well, these two things are linked because I've got to do the exposure monitoring. And then after the exposure monitoring, there'll be an action plan to reduce the noise. I'll make that one action. No, 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 for goodness sake, no, don't do that. That will cause you to fail. You group it together. Look at that. Look, they've taken both of those into there. Does that look exactly the same as what's written in here? No. Does it look exactly the same as what they wrote in there? No, it's different. It's changed. Fail. Fail. It's very simple. You can either choose the top one and put that in there, or you can choose the bottom one and you put that in there. But you cannot do both. Simple as that. So that won't get you there. Right, so that's the actions. Next, let me just show you the sheet. So this is the sheet we're filling in. Then you've got to fill in this specific legal duty box. Very simple. We just need 3 things. Mistakes to avoid include using the wrong law. What you have to do is use the most specific legislation to that hazard. So try to avoid, where possible, try to avoid using the Health and Safety at Work Act, or if you're an international student, ILO C155R164. Those are very generic legislation, very generic. If you've got a manual handling hazard, try to use the manual handling regulations. If you've got a chemical hazard, use the COSH regulations. If you're a UK student, use acts or regulations. UK students do not use guidance, no guidance docs. Acts, regulations, and preferably the regs. Some hazards have no regulation. Stress, no, there's no stress at work regs. Lone working, substance abuse, violence, there is no legislation. So in that case, you may use the Health and Safety at Work Act. That's fine. But if it's like chemicals, work at height, noise, vibration, fire, like there is legislation for that. So use those regulations. ILO students, you can use any of your ILO conventions, recommendations, or codes of practice. But again, try to use something that is specific to the hazard. So this is what the guidance says. It says for UK students, if you've got a hazardous substance, try and use the COSH regulations. You must reference UK specific legislation, and it should be the most specific one. ILO students, use ILO stuff. International students, you may also include your own country's legislation, but this will not be marked. So don't bother. Don't bother. If you're from Nigeria, don't bother including the Nigerian legislation. If you're from India, the Middle East, don't put the Indian Factories Act or anything like that. No one cares. No one cares. Just use the ILO legislation. That's all. One error is to not make a full legal argument. Let's say your action is to replace the sprinkler pumps with modern, quieter pumps, and that's a noise control. What you have to do is these 3 things. You have to include a basic duty. The controls noise at work regulations require noise exposure to be eliminated or controlled. So that's the first thing you put in. You then explain your current situation. The poorly maintained 50-year-old pumps generate a huge ton of noise. That's number 2. And then you add on, I state the duty is being breached. Since there are more modern and quieter pumps available, we are in breach of this duty. That's number 3. You have to do those 3 things. Say what the duty is, explain the current situation, and say the duty is being breached. Let me show you how that works, because we've got it in the sample. The sample does this very, very well. Yeah, there it is on this sample here. So we've got under the work at height regs, There's a duty to ensure work at height is properly planned, blah, 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 blah. That's my duty. So that's number 1. Instructions are given to the workforce to walk around the inspection pit if they're working in the area, but these instructions are usually ignored. Workers will jump across the pit rather than walking around it. That's number 2. Therefore, we're failing in this duty. That's number 3. Include all 3 things in that specific legal argument box and do that on all 3 of the sheets. You've got sheet 1, sheet 2, and then sheet 3. Got to do it 3 times. 3 times. Right. Likelihood and severity. Oh my goodness. My goodness. If anything's going to catch you out, it'll be this. I don't know why. It's actually very, very simple. This box here catches people out all the time. You have 6 things that need to be included in this box. And NEBOSH, to help you, have literally written them down in the box. I've written it down. 6 things. If you fail to give any one of those 6 things on any of your 3 sheets, the whole thing fails. What are the 6 things? You have to write down the level of severity. So the severity. So if we have a look at this, so here we've got a work at height hazard. What is the level of severity from this hazard? And here it says the severity could be serious or to very serious. Can you see how they're kind of saying what the severity is? The severity varies from serious to very serious. Right. So we've got a severity. You write down the possible injuries or the ill health conditions, because what you're doing is you are justifying why it's so severe. You're having to explain why it's so severe. So here it says we've got all these injuries there. Great. You then write down the level of likelihood, high, medium, or low. So if we go to our sheet, what have we got? We've got the level of likelihood. And it says the level of likelihood is quite high, just there. And then you explain why it's high. You say, right, we've got all these people are exposed. Right, if we have a look again, look at the number of mechanics. We have this many mechanics. Notice it's a number. NEBOSH want a number, or at least the examiners that I see, they want a number. And I know that you might repeat the number 3 times on all 3 sheets because it might be the same group of people 3 times. I don't care. Write it down 3 times. Write it down 3 times because you're taking a risk of failing. Write down the number. Don't assume that because you wrote a number up here, don't assume that that number there means you can avoid writing it here. I've had students say this. Oh, but I wrote the number in the introduction. Therefore, I didn't think I needed to write it. Like, so you're just being lazy then, aren't you? You're just being careless. You lack conscientiousness. That's what I would say. You're being reckless is what I would say. It's like, it tells you to write it down. Just write it down. It's there. I wrote it down in number 1 and number 2. I didn't think I had to repeat it in number 3. Goodness sake. Someone's saying, can we say all? No, you can't say all. No, you can't say all. I know you should be able to say all, but I'm okay with you saying all. I see examiners failing people for all the time. Don't write down all. Write down an approximate number of guests. So if you're a hotel, I assume it's a hotel or something. Yeah, hotel, right. If it's if you've got 250 rooms, and just say up to 250 guests, up to 500 guests. Could be just put a number. I don't care if it's accurate. Just put a number, an approximate number. That should get you through it. Don't take any chances. So we're going to put a number. And then number 5 is how often the task is carried out. So here it's regular, daily. So daily, not regular. Regular is not how often. To be clear, I go to the dentist quite regularly. Yeah, maybe every year. I go to the gym quite regularly. Right, a couple of times a week. I go to the toilet quite regularly too. I won't tell you how often that is. Can you see regular can be very different? Like daily, weekly, monthly, hourly, minute by minute, constantly. Like, give us some idea how often we do the task. The last thing you put on here, number 6 on the list, is how widespread the risk is. How widespread is it? Is it in all areas? Is it in other areas? Is it just this area? And if we look at our example here, it says the risk is confined to the inspection pit area only if it affects workers in this area. If we go have a look at another example, the risk is present throughout the garage. Just one line. If we look at another one, working in this area only. 6 mechanics. So you can see how they repeated it. 6 mechanics, and then 6 mechanics have repeated it. So you have to put all 6 things in there. And remember what you're doing. You are trying to justify this action up here. You're trying to explain why we should do it. The risk is high. Why is the risk high? Because the likelihood is high. Why is the likelihood high? Well, we've got this many people, we do the job this often, and the risk is this widespread. And the severity is high. Why is the severity high? Because these are the types of injuries you can suffer. So what you're doing here, going back to NG1 and IG1, remember risk, you studied what is risk. It's likelihood, it's severity, yeah? You studied that. You're just now showing your understanding of risk from your risk assessment. So that's the likelihood and severity box. Please do not mess that up because you will fail if you do. Make sure all of those 6 things are in there. So if we take a look at this one real quickly, we can do a bit of an audit. Does this pass? Well, does it have the likelihood? Yeah, likelihood's there. Does it have the severity? The severity, the severity just says it depends. It depends. Severity, oh yeah, there it is. Severity is serious. Okay. Injuries are like, so that's done. That's done. Types of injuries. Yeah. We've got the injuries. Great. So that's done. Number of workers. No number of workers. How often the activity is carried out? No. How widespread the risk is? No. Doesn't have it. Fail. Fail. Can I have another £92, please, and another 3 months of your life? That fails. This passes. Effectiveness of the action. So this is the very last box on the sheet here. It's not the final countdown. It's the final critical thing we have to do. And again, we've got 3 bullet points telling you what you have to put in. And you've got to do this on all 3 sheets. Sheet 1 and sheet 2 and sheet 3. So what must we avoid doing? Well, we've just got to make sure we don't miss any of the information. So you've got to give the intended impacts. Like, what will it do to the hazard? What does this action do to the hazard? Is it going to prevent people from falling? Is it going to reduce the risk of slips by making the floor less slippery? Like, what is the effect? What's it actually going to achieve? Like, how is it going to reduce the risk? That's kind of what it's asking for. How is it going to prevent the injuries? What is it actually going to do? Also include the time scale. Now, this is one of those daft mistakes where people fail for something ridiculous, where the time scale does not match what they wrote on the risk assessment. Now, so what I've seen people do, people are always like editing and changing things, and what they do is they might write down like 1 month in here. And then later, when they're checking it, they think, oh, 1 month, oh, that's too long, or I'll change it to a week. But then what they do, they forget that they had a different time scale in here. And so then the time scale in this box and the time scale on the risk assessment don't match. And believe me, you will fail for that. If the time scale in the risk assessment doesn't match the time scale in that effectiveness box, you will fail. As harsh and as ridiculous as that sounds, you got to get that right. So make sure those 2 things match. So you write down the impact, you write down the time scale, and then you justify why you've chosen that particular time scale. So why, if you've chosen 1 month and that month is on your risk assessment, you've written it here, why is it not longer? Why is it not sooner? Why 1 month? So the example I've put, sorry, and there's one last thing to do. Obviously it's getting late now, so I'm getting tired and forgetting things. You also then have to add whether you think this action will fully control the risk. And you have to state either it will or it won't, and possibly explain why. If it won't control the risk, explain why. Let's take a look at this example here. Does this do what we want it to do? Well, does it give us the intended impact? Well, it will help. Does it tell us how it's going to stop people from falling into the pit? No, it doesn't. Does it have the time scale? No, it doesn't. Does it explain why they've chosen that time scale? No, it doesn't. Does it tell us whether the action will fully control the risk? No, it just says it will help. No, it doesn't. So it doesn't do anything. It's useless. Complete big fat fail. If we take this then, does this one do it? Will it tell us the impact? Well, it says it will improve working practices in the area of the inspection pit. I would say that's a bit questionable, to be honest. I'm not very happy with that. I'm not convinced. I would say something like it will enable people to walk over the inspection pit rather than jump across it, which will then discourage people from jumping. That would be clearer. Does it have a timescale? Yes. Does the timescale match the risk assessment? Yes. Does it justify the timescale? Well, it's a specialized piece of kit. No one in the business used before. Business needs to source a supplier, arrange a delivery date, hope to complete it well within a 2-month deadline. Yeah, so that's good. So we'll find that. Will it fully control the risk? The bridge will definitely reduce the likelihood of falling into the pit and getting serious injuries. Risk will be adequately controlled. Great, so that's done. Something like that. That's it. We've done part 3. It is 7:30. I'm going to carry on and do part 4 and give you some final tips at the end. There are some key things just to mention at the end to close it off. And also, if you've got any more questions, put it in the chat, put it in the Q&A. I'm just going to keep going. This will be pretty quick though, because part 4 is a non-critical section. It's nice to have. Nice to have. So fill it in, sure. But don't stress too much. It's not critical. So what do? Provide a review date. Give an actual date. And with a year and a month and a day. Justify the review date. So explain why you've chosen that date. And the usual answer is, our company policy is to review risk assessments every year. Therefore, the review date is in a year on this day. That's the standard answer. Then in the communication box, just say how you're going to communicate the findings. And then in the final box, how are you going to follow up and check the actions have been completed. And it should look like that. So there's your review date with a little explanation. That's how we communicate it. That's how we follow it up. It's a non-critical section, so don't stress too much. Red alert, to finish this off, best approach to pass first time is you take part 2 and you take part 3 and you will follow the study, write and check method like I said at the beginning. So basically what you could do is the guidance document I'm going to send you tomorrow, the email with the guide, just get that in front of you as you write it and you go to part 2 and study how to do the hazards and then write all the hazards. Then study how to do the who might be harmed and how. Then do the who might be harmed and how and so on. And work your way down the form and then slowly fill in each column, one column at a time. So there's your big fat warning for that. Now, how do you submit it? Well, you submit it directly to your course provider. So it's a little bit different to your exam. With your exam, you uploaded your exam to the NEBOSH platform. That's not how it works for NG1. At current time of filming, you have to give it to your course provider in whatever way they've asked you. So if it's by email or upload or Dropbox or whatever, just do that. Key things to know though. It must be a PDF. They will not accept anything else. It must have your name and learner number on it. So like at the bottom of the form, this header down here, you got a header, a footer, sorry. It's not a header, it's a footer. Just double click on there, double click, and then you can type things in. Yeah, put it in there. So do that. Name the file. You don't need to stress too much about this, but make sure the file name is your name, your number, and your course provider in some format like this. Jim Carey, here's the number, Compassa. And then what happens? Well, you submit it. And the question is, how long? How long until you get your results? NEBOSH say it takes 50 working days from the date of the assessment. And you're like, what? How long? Yeah, I'm sorry. So you wait 50 working days. And then you get an email. And you read your email. And it says, I was referred? What does that mean? Well, I'm sorry. That means you failed. You got caught out. What did you get caught out on? Well, let me guess. You got caught out on part 3, likelihood and severity. You missed out the number of workers. Oh dear. Oh dear. I tell you what, the practical project will sort out those of you who can those of you who have attention to detail, and those of you who don't. It will sort out those of you who can follow instructions and those of you who can't. It's going to sort out the wheat from the chaff on this. You can be an excellent safety professional. You can be awesome in every way, but you're a bit scatterbrained, you're a bit distracted, you're going to fail your NG2. Guarantee it. It's not a measure of your competence, this. It's also a measure of your ability just to follow the instructions. So you failed. What happens then? Well, okay. You're going to get this feedback form, and the feedback form is going to tell you that you did not meet that, or whatever the criteria is. You've got this bit here, the part 2 and the part 3. This is your critical criteria. It's going to tell you which one of those you failed. And hopefully it's going to give you some feedback. Hopefully some very good feedback, which tells you exactly where you went wrong. And you're going to use that, and that's going to be super useful. And if you do not understand your feedback, just go speak to your course provider. If you are a Compassa student, don't you worry. I've already read your feedback before you even get your result. I've already prepared my advice to you before you've even got your result. So don't worry, Compassa students, you're well in hand. Other course providers vary a lot in how they do this. Many course providers do not even send you the feedback unless you ask for it, which I think is out of order, personally. So you might have to go and ask for it. And if you don't understand the feedback, you might have to go and ask your course provider to explain, what it means and what you have to do. And they are allowed to tell you that. So they are allowed to help you on this. If you are not a Compassa student, don't come asking me to help you with your feedback. I'm sorry, that's a service reserved for Compassa students. If you're interested in that, then you'll have to apply for our rescue package, which basically means pay us some money, jump on board, switch over to us. More than happy to help you then. But Compassa students have kind of all got that included in the service. So what do? Well, you're going to resubmit. You're going to make the changes. You're going to have to register for a new submission. That's going to cost you some money. You'll make the changes based on the feedback. Only change the things that you need to change to satisfy the feedback. And then you resubmit. And then you wait another 50 working days for your result. Yes, sorry, it's going to cost you lots of money, lots of time, lots of frustration. But hopefully you will pass on that second attempt. Only change what you need to change to fix the not met criteria. Any criteria you have already met will remain met, provided you don't change them. If you start changing lots of things which don't need to be changed, I'm sorry, your examiner is probably going to remark that from scratch, which I think is only fair. If you change some stuff, then it's up to be remarked. Do not fix what is not broken. Some things you should change, though. I would recommend that you change the date of the risk assessment to show that it's up to date. And you should therefore change the review date. So the review date should kind of fall in line with whatever date is on there, yeah? So yes, do change the date of the risk assessment, do change the review date, and change anything else which needs to be fixed in order to meet the criteria. There we are. That's what we've done, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to take some questions now if you have any more questions, but do remember, if you do need any more help, you've got the YouTube channel, of course. But if you're really struggling, you've got that rescue package. Just go into the NEBOSH section here, go to where it says rescue package. There's an application form if you need it. And basically we'll offer you our full course, full tutor support, basically everything we've got to offer. And we'll help get you through the qualification. So anyway, questions at this point? Questions, let's have a look. I've got a question here from someone who says, let's say I am booked for the NG2 assessment on the 10th of December. When do I submit to my course provider? That depends. You should ask your course provider. They all have slightly different deadlines. Now, I think you said earlier you were from Shields. I used to work at Shields. Shields have a lot of students because they're a very successful company. In terms of their sales, number of students, certainly. So they need quite a long time to get them all in. So you won't have long, I don't think. You maybe have a few days or a week. Ask them. Ask them. If you are at Compassa, if you're a Compassa student, we give you about 10 days. So the submission on the 10th of December, so it opens on the 10th of December, you would have until the 21st of December, I think it is. Actually, there's Christmas in the way, so I might be wrong. No, actually, I think it's January, actually. I think because of Christmas, it's January. I think it's January. Yeah, if you're a Compassa student, just check there's a diary. So you can check it there, or you can email me and we'll tell you. All right, any more questions from anybody? There are still 25 people on the call who've survived this far. Any more questions? Type it in. Hi, Will. I'm currently concentrating on NG1, but joined this webinar to try and get a step ahead. How do you download the template? Right, well, the template, not sure which course provider you're with. You're welcome to the people saying thank you. Not sure which course provider you're with off the top of my head, but you can always get it from the NEBOSH website. You should be able to get it from your course provider, of course, but sometimes if you can't find it, it's easier just to get it on the NEBOSH website. So go to the NEBOSH website, go to qualifications, go to certificates, and that'll take you down here. So go to your NEBOSH National General Certificate, resources, that'll take you down here, practical guidance. There's your form there. So just click on that, bang. See, it's in my downloads there. So you just click on that, open it, bang, there you go, it's open. Click on edit, jobs are good. There you are. You with Astutis? Okay, I'm sure it's on the Astutis platform. They'll have it somewhere. It's been a very long time since I looked at their e-learning platform, so I don't know where it is. Someone's asking, shall I start NG2 now? Well, you can if you want. What I recommend to my students is I recommend that they study the entire NG2, IG2 hazard section first. So you've got to like do element 5, element 6, element 7, work through that. But think about your project while you're doing it. Don't start writing it. Don't write it, but think about it. Like as you study the course, think of a workplace. Yeah, I'm in a hospital. Am I going to do an office? Am I going to do a ward? Am I going to do a plant room, kitchen, canteen? What am I going to do? So think of a workplace. And as you're studying the course, as you say, studying hazardous substances, think about what hazardous substances do I have in this workplace? What control measures do I have in this workplace? What control measures are missing? I'm studying all these control measures and I'm thinking, we don't do any of that. So what more could I do? You know, you can maybe take some notes as you go through it. Go through all of that section and then follow the study, write, check method. So on our course, I can't speak for Astutis or Shields or Phoenix or anyone else. On our course, we teach you how to fill in every box. So sorry, this box, this is how you fill it in. And it starts with the hazards, right? So go and choose your hazards, write them all out and fill them in the boxes. And then just basically fill in your project at the end of the course. I think that's the best of it. And that's what helps us get such a high pass rate. I cannot share with you the national pass rates. I'm not allowed to tell you what other people's pass rates are. I will lose my NEBOSH accreditation if I start to disclose confidential information. But what I will say is that our pass rate is way higher than the overall pass rate for all course providers put together. Way higher. When I say way, I mean way higher. It's not as high as I would like. 75% is actually not that high in my opinion. I'd like it 90, but we're trying. Most course providers would be much lower. And I think the strategy we have of doing it study, write, check and giving very clear instructions and doing everything at the end in one go, that works really well. Just do it at the end. Someone's asking, will I be able to rewatch this webinar? Yes, so tomorrow there'll be an automated email that'll go out with a link, so you can watch the link. But also I'm going to put it on YouTube as well, so that'll probably land in the next day or two, maybe next week at most, so you can watch it there as well. We also have a lot of other stuff on YouTube. There's a previous webinar as well. I've delivered the same webinar before. It's already on YouTube. just have a search on our channel for it. In terms of the channel, I'll just show you just how easy it is to find stuff. So if you just go onto YouTube and I'm not logged in, but we should be able to find stuff. If you just type in NEBOSH, you'll find us straight away. There you are. I mean, we're the first result because basically it's all us for the most part. There's Stockwell Safety as well, but they don't post many videos anymore. And there we are. So you can go to the playlists. Playlists are a little bit of a mess. Very hard to sort them out, but there's one there on NG2. And there's no one here on NG2. And you can just do a search, and you can just do a search for webinar. Search for webinar. Which one? There you go. This one here. There you go. That's the last webinar I did 6 months ago. It's the exact same webinar. So hopefully that's useful. You're welcome to all the people who are saying thank you. Question: if the swimming pool is not supervised, but adults are using it, can I say swimming pool not supervised is a hazard? No. No, the lack of supervision is not a hazard. The lack of supervision never killed anybody. You do not drown in a lack of supervision. You drown in water. Water's the hazard. The swimming pool's the hazard. The lack of supervision needs to be addressed in your controls, to be clear. I've said that multiple times. I'll keep saying it. We are creatures of habit. We need repetition for it to sink in. It just goes to show that you don't know what a hazard is yet. That's this. Sorry to be blunt. That's not an insult. It's not an insult, but sometimes I have to be blunt to get the point across. If you think a lack of supervision is a hazard, you don't know what a hazard is. Water is the hazard. The who might be harmed and how is adult users who are not supervised could get into difficulty in the water and drown. That's your who might be harmed and how. What do we do? Extra action, provide supervision at all times. Or prohibit people from swimming alone. You must always have a minimum of 2 people in the swimming pool, so at least one person can call for help. If I used a military workplace, can I quote military policies as existing controls, e.g. Army alcohol policy, or will that confuse the examiner? You can put your Army controls as a control measure. Yeah, sure. So when we say put them down as controls, what we might say is in here, so in the what are you already doing, you could talk about standard military policy is a complete ban on, complete ban on alcohol, say, or on alcohol. And yeah, you could write those down. That's absolutely fine. Now, where it does get a little bit tricky for military installations or anything MOD related, it gets a little bit tricky in your general legal arguments because here's the thing. This is a little bit of advanced information. We don't cover this on the course, by the way. It's not in the syllabus. But the MOD is exempt from prosecution under HASAWA. It's exempt from prosecution. Now, let me just be clear as to what that means. That the MOD, the Ministry of Defense, is subject to HASAWA. So yes, the law does apply to the Ministry of Defense. The MOD is not above the law. They still have to follow the law, but they are exempt, or not exempt. The correct word is immune from prosecution, which basically means that when you're talking about your criminal consequences, the criminal consequences are different. You cannot be prosecuted. You cannot be fined. What can happen is that there can be a crown censure. A crown censure. And if you want to find out more about that, I would recommend just Googling it. Real easy. Let me just share the right screen. Where is it? I'll share. Going in somewhere. So if I just search MOD crown censure, or if I that'll do, to be honest. There's the crown censures taken by the MOD. If I just search MOD immune HASAWA, something like that, there should be a whole webpage. Here you go, health and safety legislation, how it applies to the MOD. And so I'll explain to you that basically you can't prosecute the Crown. It's got Crown privilege. The law still applies, but you can't be prosecuted in the courts. You can be censured, which basically just means you get a very embarrassing telling off in the court. All right. If wrong fire extinguisher is in place, is it a hazard? No, it's not a hazard. Having the wrong fire extinguisher in the wrong place doesn't hurt you. What hurts you is fire and smoke. Do you get it yet? Do you get it? You keep asking the same question different ways. Is this bad control a hazard? No. Oh, the door's blocked open. No. No. We don't have a CCTV camera. No. We haven't provided no. No. Oh, the door's broken. No. No. They're not hazards. They are control measures. They're a defective, missing control measure. Do you get it yet? I keep saying it in like 10 different ways. Let's say in the canteen there's a water-based extinguisher instead of CO2. It's not a hazard. It's not a hazard. Fix it. Yes, it's a problem and you should fix it in the control measures. It's not a hazard. Are we required to have named all hazards? I work in a big department, in a big organization. There are many hazards. No, you do not have to have all hazards. No, you do not. You only need a minimum of 10 hazards. I recommend you have 12 or 13. That would be good. But if you've missed a lot of hazards, that's absolutely fine. If you think back to the example I gave earlier, way earlier, hours ago now, hours ago, I had, where is it? I had this call center. And I said I missed some hazards. I had, for this, I've got a shredder, I've got a photocopier, I've got lots of hazards that I've just missed. I've got kettles and toasters and all kinds of things. It's okay. As long as I've got 10 good hazards with all of the boxes filled in. That's what the criteria is. So if I just go back to, oh, where is it? Can I find the slide? Can I find the slide? Where is it? Justification sheets. Looking for the slide. There it is. That's the main criteria for the risk assessment. That one there. You need a minimum of 10 hazards with all the columns filled in like this. If you've missed off some hazards, that's fine. As long as you've got 10, you're good. Yeah. Okay. So let's have a look at the questions. Someone's asking the criteria of choosing actions in part 3. How do I choose my actions in part 3? Just choose the most, just the highest priority in your opinion. That's all. Which one's the most urgent? So, is the risk high? Like, can someone be killed if we don't do this? Like, does this hazard, does it have the potential to kill people? And then, of all of the actions I've got for this hazard, which one's going to make the biggest difference? That would be a priority for me. So let's say I've got a major work at height issue. Let's say I've got people using ladders really unsafely. The ladders are unsafe. The ladders are just not suitable. And I'm recommending we get a cherry picker, a mobile elevating work platform, a MUP, quite expensive, right? Because people can die if they fall off the ladders. For me, that's quite a high risk. Getting a cherry picker is really going to make a big difference to this. And obviously that's not the only action. I've got more actions. I've got to buy a cherry picker. I've got to train people to use the cherry picker. I've got to provide harnesses for the cherry picker. I've got to get a banksman for the cherry picker. Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done on the cherry picker still, but buy the cherry picker is like the big main action, right? For me, that would be a priority. So just choose, in your opinion, what do you think are the free actions that are going to make the biggest difference? That's all. And don't stress, because the examiner is told not to, they don't have to agree with your actions. It says, let me bring up the slide again, just to show you, because maybe you missed it. Because it has been a long presentation, to be fair, so maybe you just missed it. If I find the right slide, it's going to be, is it here? Here, I think. No, not that. No, I've lost it, I think. Lost it. Completely lost it. I will find it in the marker guidance, so if you give me a moment. Here, no, marker guidance. Where's the marker guidance? Lost that as well. That's in here. Too many tabs open, people. Too many tabs. Where is it going to say that? It says, let me just search for the word agree. There you go. It says you don't have to agree with the selection. 3 is an arbitrary workable number. It's the justification that's more important. So that's what it says. So don't stress about the choice of the actions. All right, that's all done. Okay. Someone else has asked a question. Category vehicles. Vehicles is not a category. Straight away. And I know that you're probably just writing it in shorthand for the chat, but just to be clear, the category is movement of people and vehicles in the workplace. Write it out in full. Hazard, FLT. No, FLT is not a hazard. FLT is equipment. And FLT has lots of different hazards. It's a vehicle movement hazard, sure. It's also a load hand. Let's just look at the hazard categories. And I'll just make the point. I'm not looking to patronize you at all. If anyone's feeling patronized, I don't intend it. It's just I grew up in France, you see. I'm like culturally, I'm part French, which is where my arrogant sense of humor comes from. But deep down inside, very, 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 very deep inside, I'm a lovely person. But that's not what it sounds like sometimes. Right, FLT. FLT is not a hazard. It's a piece of equipment. An FLT creates noise. It's load handling equipment. The loads can drop off. An FLT has, if it's a battery one, it has battery acid. If it's a diesel one, it has diesel fumes as well, so that's another hazard. You can have very big FLTs. You can fall off of them, so it's work at height. It's a vehicle as well. It's got mechanical hazards, so it's got moving parts, chains and things. If it's got diesel, if it's got gas, then it's a fire hazard and there's electrical hazards. So when you say FLT, it's like it doesn't actually tell me what the hazard is. So the correct if you're on about the movement of the FLT, so the possibility of it bumping into people, that's the correct category, of course, movement of people and vehicles, obviously, that would be the correct one. And then in terms of the hazard description, well, let me just bring up that slide again, because I did speak about how hazards have got to be specific. And it's going to be, where is it? It's going to be in here somewhere. There you go. There you go. I mean, I've kind of got it here. Vehicles in yard. It's not very specific, is it? It's not very specific. Can you write down something like this? Can you write down FLTs and trucks in constant operation in the yard near pedestrians? See, that's the key bit. That's the key bit, because what you want to get in there is you have to show that it's potentially harmful. Because an FLT, if it's just parked up and gathering dust, it's not potentially harmful. But if the FLT is in constant operation in a yard and the yard has pedestrians in it, that shows the potential for harm. Like, this is really important. Your hazard description has to show the potential for harm. So category, movement of people and vehicles. Hazard, FLT in constant operation somewhere near people, near walkways. Who might be harmed and how? 3 things. Job title. You've said production operative in the chat. Great. The incident. Well, I would say you said crush injury. No, where's the incident? Again, you need an incident. You need 3 things. You need a job title, an incident, and an injury. You've got 2 things in there. You've put production operative, crush injury. But what we need is an incident as well. So it's production operative could be hit by the forklift and suffer a crush injury. You need 3 things. All 3 things. Then you've got some controls. You've only put 1 existing control, banksman. You've put 1 additional control, speed limiter. It's not enough. It's not enough. I want way more than that. Right, training, maintenance, barriers, walkways. Like, there's a load of control. Go to your course materials. Go to course materials. Actually, I mean, I'll tell you what we'll do real quickly. If you bear with me for like just a minute or so, what I'll do, I'll open up my e-learning course and I'll show you what you've got in my e-learning course. I've literally got a list of things that you need for forklifts. Just give me a minute. Now, obviously, you can't just take these things and put it on your project. You're going to have to amend it a little bit to make it bespoke. But I've just got almost like a menu you can choose from. So just bear with me one moment while I bring this up. I'll share the screen so you can see what I'm doing. You can see our course in action. So I'm going to go to the, where is it? Vehicles. Vehicles are in element 8, general workplace issues. And I'm going to scroll down to vehicles. Yeah, this one here. It's in this tutorial here. There you go. All of this. Safe site, all this stuff. This is all the stuff in relation to vehicles. Safe vehicle, all the stuff in relation to vehicles there. So you've got safe site, safe vehicle, safe driver. Right. Now, you can't just copy that in, because many of those might not be relevant to your particular workplace. But a lot of them will be, and obviously you can then adapt these to see fits. But it should give you some inspiration, you know. And a lot of these are legal requirements, so make use of that. Time scale, 1 month. 1 month speed limiters, yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe. Fine. If you've got a company who can install that for you, sure. Responsible person engineering manager, yeah, sure, that's fine. So your issues there is your category is wrong, your hazard is not very clear, you've missed out an incident, and you need a lot more controls. But other than that, it's okay. Other than that, it's okay. Someone's asking, what's the minimum number of actions in column 4? There isn't a minimum number of actions in column 4. The minimum number is however many is required. However many is required. You're saying you were brief. Okay, I get you. I thought you were, because it's just a chat, isn't it? The minimum number of actions is required. Firstly, you've got to do everything that's legally required. You've got to do everything that's reasonably practicable. You've got to use the hierarchy of control and bring the risk down to a low level. How many does that take? Depends. Depends on the hazard. There's no minimum number. But the examiner will look at your hazard and go, okay, yeah, I kind of know what's needed there. So if you've got something like substance abuse, the examiner will think, all right, I want a substance abuse policy. Possibly, depending on the industry, I might want some drug and alcohol testing. I might want some spot checks on looking for alcohol and drugs on the premises, searching of lockers, searching of toilets where the little hiding places are. I want to have some training, drug and alcohol awareness for managers, so managers can spot who might be under the influence and they know what to do in that case. We might identify certain critical tasks where we have to absolutely make sure no one's under the influence. You know, things like operating machinery and that kind of thing. So that there's not a huge amount there. You know, you might have counseling as well and rehabilitation procedures, but there's not a huge amount to say substance abuse. But then you might have a chemical hazard, which is just a ton of stuff, just an absolute ton. There's no minimum number. All right. Any more? One new message. What does it say? Sorry, Will, I'm awake since 5. I have to go. It's 11 p.m. Well, bless you for having stayed this long. Go and get some rest, Abdullah. Go and get some rest. All right, I'll leave it there, people. If you need any more help, you can feel free to drop me an email, drop me a comment on social media. And I tell you what, even if you're not a Compassa student, I tell you what, how it would really help me. Please recommend Compassa to other people that you know. If you're studying with a different provider, if you found us helpful, please refer your friends, your colleagues to us if they need any NEBOSH training or IOSH training. That's all. I will look after them even better than I've looked after you this evening. Anyway, I'll leave you be. You're all very welcome. I'm going to go now. I'm going to go to bed too. Speak soon.